imagine the person dealing with a global crisis has to go first.
Tell me when you're ready, friend. It's okay. I can check it now. Just look at what committees you're assigned. Finance is good.
It's the only one. No. Waiting for the computer to boot up.
Just tell me. You're just spinning.
It's loading.
Did you look at all the? Yes, yes. I'm just saying.
Okay. I'm ready. Okay, I'm going to call to order the Finance Committee at 6:05 p.m. I recognize board members Beth Brindle and Robin Seagreaves, and employee representative Jeff Bauer. Thank you. Excused this evening from the Finance Committee is Vice Chairperson Shauna Maxwell. With that, we move to the approval of the minutes. Do any members of the committee have additions, corrections, deletions for the March 11th Finance Committee meeting minutes? Okay. Seeing none, the minutes are approved and will be placed on file. We have two presentations this evening. We're going to start with the Chester County Intermediate Unit budget presentation. We have Dr. George Fiore, Executive Director, and Joe Libitsky, Director of Administrative Services, here to present to us before rushing to another school board meeting.
Yes, thank you. We always love, because we get to highlight the work of our students and our staff, so we appreciate that, and we know you have a busy board meeting. Thank you to your representative on the IU board, Robin Seagreaves, for your support and lending the Coatesville voice to our board. So bottom line on our intermediate unit budget, which as an extension of your school district, there's a tremendous amount of supports that Mr. Libitsky and I are going to talk about. The first, our proposed budget is a little north of $364 million. There's no increase to all school districts in Chester County to the core budget contribution. There's a 4% increase in occupational education tuition rate and an overall increase of 3.87% in marketplace services. And we'll talk about each one of these in depth, Mr. Libitsky, as we move through. So Our budget is made up of 4 components, a little different than school district when I was serving as superintendent. But most of this is in school code, the way it'll follow. The first is the core services budget, and that's adopted by weighted school district vote by April 30th. You'll vote on that as you do each year on the core services budget. The occupational educational budget is adopted by your district board by majority vote by June 30th, and typically most boards put them together when they're voting. The marketplace budget, those are the budgets in programs and services that school districts opt in. It's a choice. And those are adopted by the IU board next Wednesday. And then our categorical services budget is approved by agencies. Those are federal and state dollars that flow through. The intermediate unit, that's one of our primary functions. We're an intermediary between state government and local school districts. We do want to highlight 2 programs that are beneficial to all 12 school districts in Chester County and a big part of the driver of our budget. As you know, post-COVID, we've seen a large increase in students needing special education. In fact, just to give you some early numbers on early intervention, preschool special education, we've seen almost 1,000 student increase over, it's about 800 in the current numbers that you're going to see, but over the last several months, we've increased by 300 students. So 1,000 student increase that are going to need services across Chester County, which means we're going to need to be able to provide services. So one of the ways that we're going to be doing that is we're renovating the Fred S. Engel Middle School in Avongrove, because currently we have one campus right here in Coatesville that serves all of Chester County and another 40 school districts across the region. We have wait lists that are approaching 100 from outside our county. So there's a great need, and we have some in county. And many of those children are on bus rides over an hour, which we didn't feel was appropriate for any student, especially those with special needs. So we're opening in around June 2025, so in a couple months, we're opening up the Engel Education Center in West Grove. We're currently engaged in a renovation project. You'll see in that light blue, we're putting in an accessible entrance that has coverage, because we have students that are from birth to 5 years old, and we also have students that are school age that'll be coming through. So we want them to be able to come off buses and also be covered, and then also having handicap accessibility. So we wanted to make sure this facility meets their needs. We're also putting in an elevator that is capable of meeting all of our children's needs. So here's the renovation. You'll see different colors. The gray area is the Avongrove School District, so we'll have their administrative team with us in that building. But all of the other areas will be available for students across Chester County. And actually beyond. We have some students in Delaware and Maryland that we're close enough to that border so we can provide more access. Here's our lower level. You'll see the migrant education will be here, Head Start, early intervention, multiple disabilities, and those with emotional support needs. Out on the, I'll call it the beige area at the bottom, we put in a new playground, an area for our little ones to be able to get outside. So really a great program in southern Chester County, which will relieve some of the pressure here on the Coatesville campus. Because like I said to you, where there's 100, a wait list, and you'll have students that now will gain more access in this area. But that only covers 2 areas. Well, we're also engaged in the construction of the Child and Career Development Center in Great Valley. So in Malvern, if you're familiar, right off 202 on Moores Road, it's readily accessible from Montgomery County, Delaware County, and our eastern part of Chester County, which is the fastest growing in our region. It's 22 acres of property. It's actually right next to St. Gobain's property, really nice area. And it's 87,000 square foot, which about 200 students is what we're going to be with multiple disabilities. And this building, and here's the tract of land that you'll see. So right off 202 in the southern part, or the bottom part of this drawing, and you'll see here, this is the building. You have plenty of parking, but more importantly, this building is built for students with special needs. One of the problems in Pennsylvania is you see mostly renovations, and we have to retrofit. This one is actually created to meet their needs. So when that's built, we're going to invite all the board members across Chester County. So it's going to be unique to the whole East Coast, and it's one that meets their needs. So we're really going to have a 3-campus model that will be able to serve children from not only Chester County, but beyond, and it helps our kids gain more access to equitable opportunities. So we're excited about that. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lubitsky. That's going to walk you through the finer points of our budget, and we'll make sure we do that in an expedited way.
Thank you, Dr. Fiore. As I go through each of the major areas of the budget, the theme that Dr. Fiore talked about growth, expansion, and serving the more complex needs of not only students in our county but in the region, I'll try to point out how that's impacted each of the budget areas. But first, I wanted to talk the next two slides about two areas that really don't require any school district approval. It's our categorical budgets. And you can see projected close to $29 million in funding next year. And on this slide, just an example of some really great success we've had with grants from all different sources over the last several years, close to $126 million through February. I'm showing these because we recognize that this is a potential area of risk. All these grants and these funding from the federal government may be at risk, and we're very, very cautious with that and being strategic in terms of monitoring that, advocating for those. But again, it's something that we have, it's a threat going forward. The first major area of the intermediate unit budget I want to talk about is the core budget. You can see the divisions that this supports. It's really kind of the backbone of the intermediate unit in terms of our support services and human resources, information technology, but it also includes a lot of services that the school districts can take advantage of. Collaborative purchasing, human resources, recruiting consortiums, certainly our communications and marketing, and a tremendous amount of professional development is housed in these areas. Next year's budget is proposed at $41.2 million. However, of that $41 million, our school districts only charged in total a little over $600,000. And for the Coatesville Area School District, your contribution will remain flat at about $46,000. It's determined through a formula involving enrollment and some other factors provided to us by the state. So those other funding streams that I just talked about are examples of how we support our kind of the backbone of our operations as opposed to charging it to our member school districts. Taking a high look at the significant changes of the budget, the first three lines of this slide are the projected increases in salaries, healthcare benefits, and also our pension benefits for our existing staff. We do have some small changes in staffing planned, but as you go down, you see something called Transfer to Building Improvement Fund. That's essentially our capital reserve fund, and again, this is how we fund, not only help fund the new construction, but also the upkeep of our over 1 million square feet of buildings across the county. The second major area of our budget is our occupational education budget. The school districts and the intermediate unit, we have put a tremendous emphasis and a great amount of investment in our career and technical education programs over the last 20 years. And really, this is a really tremendous success story. In the last 10 years, we have close to 1,000 more students in our 3 technical college high school campuses in a wide variety of programs. And it's not just one campus. All 3 are seeing a trajectory over the last several years of increases in student enrollment. So obviously, that's a wonderful reflection on our teaching staff and our programs development and our curriculum. Taking a high-level look at the proposed budget for next year, it's proposed at approximately $34.6 million. That's about a 3.3% increase over this year's budget. You can see the enrollment numbers, and I'll show how they factor into the funding stream for us. And if approved, the tuition for our half-time student would go up 4% to $11,188. Using the same format to highlight the significant changes, you can see in the first 3 lines, again, the increases in our healthcare benefits, projected salary increases, and pension system contributions. We do have some staffing changes, both additions to support new programs as well as reductions to help offset cost, and you see increase in debt service. The school district's in the midst of, I know, capital programs. You understand debt service and the need to borrow money to expand facilities. We were able to reduce some other areas of expenses for an overall projected increase of 3.3%. We do not like to increase prices. We do not like to increase tuition. In the occupational education, we have a history where 8 of the last 15 years, we were able to keep tuition flat. But if we have to increase tuition, we always strive to keep that increase at or below the Act 1 index. And if approved, this budget would achieve that, as you can see in this chart, which compares the Act 1 increase index to our annual tuition increase. Enrollment across the county has gone up tremendously. Just a quick look at this, you could see our, again, all school districts. And what does this mean? I just extracted the numbers. For the Coatesville area school district, you are one of the largest senders of students to our programs. And this chart shows how your funding stream is based on your 3-year average enrollment. The top section is the current year, showing a full-time equivalency of 170 students. That's going to jump to 194 next year because of the increases in enrollment over the last several years. So you do have a fairly significant increase in your projected cost for career and technical education next year. However, you have 430-something students in a wide array of programs at all 3 of our campuses. And this chart outlines that, the participation those students have. All of our campuses also offer students the opportunity to enroll in dual enrollment programs. They're earning college credits while they're in high school. We estimate that over 1,000 credits were earned last year, with a value of about $500,000 to those families and those students in terms of tuition costs. We've also continued to expand our pre-apprenticeship programs. And you can see how we're expanding them into the building trades, machinist trades, and auto trades. And probably most importantly is our students are leaving our programs very employable. They have a lot of opportunities. We have recruiters at all of our campuses, and last year conducted over 2,000 interviews at the campuses in all of our programs. The last area of the budget is the largest area. It's the marketplace services budget. This is the area with 127 programs and projected budgets totaling $260 million next year. This is a little unique that school districts are only charged for the services that they buy into, generally in student services and special education services. Our largest area of this budget is the IU's Student Services Division. You can see some familiar names of programs that we administer and run throughout the region on this particular chart. We estimated last year that we served over 19,000 students in these programs. And kind of following up on what Dr. Fiore said, just a couple examples of 2 programs. The Child and Career Development Center, you could see the growth in our enrollment. That's actually, these are September numbers. We're closer to 380 students on that campus now. Preschool special education continues to grow on a monthly basis, over 2,600 students now. So again, part of the reason for the strategy to continue to grow and expand. The overall budget again would be a $7.2 million increase, or about 2.8% on our current budget. This is where the bulk of our staff and our resources are. So obviously the numbers in terms of the significant changes in expenditures a little bit larger here. We do have some staffing changes that I'll talk about. They're again related to the expansion projects, and the debt service number, again, that's the majority of the funding for both the Engel Education and campus, as well as the Great Valley campus. Of the roughly 30 full-time equivalent positions that are in the budget, those highlighted in blue are the teachers, administrators, support staff, custodians, and others that we've budgeted to support the opening of the new campus in southern Chester County. This budget is supported by a menu of prices for various services, tuitions, and other costs that districts can opt into. The average increase would be 3.87%. You can see in this chart we were successful in keeping about 143 of those prices flat, no increase. 214 will have increases between 0 and 4%, the Act 1 index, and then you can see the rest of the structure there. And again, using the same historical look, we have been very successful, despite inflationary pressures, growth, and increasing demands, of keeping our price increases well below the Act 1 index each year. So in summary, here are our four overall budgets projected to be $364 million. And this last slide is an attempt, based on current enrollments and service levels to your students and to the school district, of the programs and services that the Coatesville Area School District and the projected cost for each of those that we have. We work very closely with your Student Services Administration and your business office on these budget projections. And with that, I think we could open it up for any questions that the board may have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I want to pause and see if any members of the committee have questions they would like to direct to the presenters.
I do not. I think I've had the pleasure of seeing this twice now. Right?
You addressed the risks with the federal budget and other sources. Do you have any, I know no one really knows, but do you have any insights on what's most at risk? Have you gotten any guidance on what things might look like?
Ms. Brindle, I wish we received more guidance, as you know, but what we are monitoring, we have about $66 million in federal funds out of that $126 million. What could be at risk, if I was going to target areas, you could probably look at your migrant education ones, 21st century education programs. However, there is no movement on any of those items. Right now, it's just talk. And that's some of the assurance I gave to some of the programs. Head Start would also be included in that group, but as you know, we haven't got anything from the Department of Education federally or locally yet. So, but we are monitoring.
I had a question just in terms of the dual enrollment program. I noticed there was a graph that showed the cost to students. And Lori, I don't know if this is more a question for you or for them, but the cost to students, is that something that the district pays or that the students pay?
Let me just get to this slide.
It's 25.
Yep, thank you. All right, so on page 25. Yeah, it's savings. All right, so what you see there is, you'll see the cost to the students. Those are, for example, Delaware County Community College might charge the $99 per credit for a course, but the savings is because of the discounts that they'll be able to do. Some of the students are also on, I'll call it scholarship or grants. So what will happen is, through the Education Foundation that we have students that apply, but they also apply for not only funding for the credits, but also the resources. Sometimes they don't have money for books. But those credit on the right-hand side, that's what they're saving in terms of total cost. But
Fab.
some cases it's student, but on need, they're usually eligible for financial assistance because they're considered a college student.
No, that's fantastic. I'm glad to see the uptake in that program. If we go to the prior slide, 24, I'm also curious, you had talked about the, career assistance, how you have people come in and do the interviews. Do we have any sense for how many of the approximately 430 students that are enrolled in programs like this have been able to either, some of them look like they're pre-college training programs, but a lot of them are kind of traditional technical programs where their next step would be a job. Do we know what percentage of graduates of these programs actually leave school with an apprenticeship or a job?
Yeah, great question, because out of this 430 number, you have also 9th graders, mostly 10th graders and 11th graders with some 12th graders. So in this group, if I was going to, just by math, you probably have about 120 students. Across the county, it's roughly an 80%, but what we're working for, to give to your superintendent very shortly is that exact breakdown for every school district, because what we do is we have placement rates. Some students are going to college, some students are entering the workforce, some students are doing both.
Okay.
Now, the pre-apprenticeships, and Ms. Brindle probably is also very familiar with this, that is a new growing program. Last year is the first year in the state where we're able to get through labor and industry. So we have a second year, and they actually expand it. So this year's numbers I expect to be much higher due to some legislative support around, because it was typically just through the Department of Education. Now it's labor and industry. So now you're able to remove some barriers to get more kids in there. So I'm actually looking forward to what I'm going to send you in September, because that's a whole new stream that we've never really had access to.
Great. I would also look forward to hearing about our student success with that program.
Yeah.
Mr. Bauer, I didn't know if you wanted to ask any questions. If not, I will open it up to the rest of the board. Any other board members have questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question about the internships. Like, are they like local? So are you trying to make sure that most of those would be with local companies, that so it's accessible to all students and
Yeah,
that type of thing?
Absolutely. In fact, those interviews are being conducted by Chester County businesses. Some are around the rim that is, Delaware County, Montgomery County, but I would say 95% of them are all Chester County businesses. I've actually participated in watching those interviews, and every time our business leaders walk away, they're like, I want to hire them right now. One anecdotal story, 5 students in one of our welding programs, some are juniors, so 4 of them are juniors, 4 males, 1 female, all had jobs after they walked out, making more money than you could imagine. Mm-hmm. And I said to those 5 students, I said, you should have asked for more money, guys, per hour, because they're in demand. So it's mostly Chester County, 95, I would say almost all. There's a few that are outside.
And then do you have a good I don't know, I haven't looked at your website, a good process for that? Like if people from the community just educate me here, on how people can business owners can do that.
Yeah, so there's a few ways. One is through the Economic Development Council.
Okay.
I'm in charge of the workforce development for Chester County as part of that.
All right.
So I'm doing a lot of recruitment, saying if you have employment needs, we're the place to go. But we also, as part of our career and technical division, they have reach outs directly to businesses that are as part of our joint operations. So every one of your CTE programs have business leaders that advise them. So there is sometimes 10, 15 members on there, and they are also part of the interview process. So every one of those are led by Chester County businesses, and that's coded in law. So we have a very strong connection, and they're different for each campus. So you may have a welding in Pickering, but you also have you have another 10 folks at Brandywine and so on and so forth. So you're looking at a program you could have potentially 30 different folks that are in Chester County that have businesses for just one program.
My son is in your marketing and finance class, and he's trying to get an internship with my brother, but I don't know how that works with each of the each of the classes and specialties. So are you trying to expand it through all of those? Okay, all right.
Oh, 100%. The more the better. In fact, the one thing for in particular is having that contact with the classroom teacher who runs the joint
Gotcha.
Operations group, because then they can connect them. They also have to go through some vetting,
Yeah.
For anybody who's going to do an internship. Sometimes it'll turn from internship to on-the-job training. There's different designations.
Gotcha.
But also, it's at least for your son, there's no requirement in terms of hours from the state, but in other programs, there are a requirement of hours. So then it's more intense.
Yeah.
So some students have a more intense field experience, some have less, depending on where they are, and the freedom to complete those hours.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thanks for the education on
Yeah,
that.
and please have them, you can reach out to us directly, especially as a parent. We can make that happen. We're always looking for more.
Awesome.
Steve? Okay. Seeing no other comments from the board members, I just have one more point that I wanted to make to you two gentlemen. If we can go back to slide 21, I think it is. Sorry, I should have put my glasses on. I really appreciate this chart that shows the Act 1 index and that you have tried to keep the increases at or below the Act 1 index. I just want to make a point that, in our community especially, just because the rate of inflation is 4% doesn't mean that we think that we should give taxpayers a 4% increase. And so continuing to maintain that vigilance on your budget and the increases that come to our district will help us help our taxpayers. You probably know that a lot of the students who attend your programs come from, a wide range of socioeconomic, households, and your programs are going to help them, be successful long-term in life, but we also have to balance that against the burden on the property owners. So I'm glad, even though it's a higher increase than maybe we've had in some past years, that there's this vigilance of keeping it below the index. And I would just ask you to not consider the index to be the target, but, a limit that we try not to reach whenever possible.
That is very affirming for us, as Ms. Seagreaves will say. We have actually, in our own policies and procedures, we never look at the index as, it's not a starting point. 0 is our starting point, to be very honest.
Yeah.
But it's exciting that for us, because it's validating for the work we're doing. So we can bring that back, Ms. Seagreaves, next week. So thank you for that comment. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate that. All right, if there are no other questions, then we thank you both for your time and let you get on the road to your next meeting. Okay, speaking of the budget,
They're going to bring up our next one.
our next presentation is from our Director of Finance, Lori Diefendorfer. And I think this is, there had been a question from the community about when we were going to get an update on the budget. Traditionally, we have our kind of first approval in January that is just kind of a legally required approval, and then April historically is when we get our first look at the budget process. So with that, take it away.
So thank you very much. Tonight, we're going to kind of get a start on where we are with our budget at this point in time. Numbers look a little scary, but again, this is just the start of the budget, so let's not get too panicked. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Robarczyk for a couple slides, and then I'll take it from there.
So good evening, and thank you for allowing us to present an update on the budget for tonight. I just want to personally thank Lori for her leadership on this, and this is one piece that I'm not always the numbers person, but I love diving into numbers and understanding it and how I can help to understand, to get us in the right direction, what's going to be the best buck for our students. So as part of the budget development, I just want to mention that the 5 areas that we look to is the enrollment numbers, and then we look at personnel, along with our expenditures and revenues, and then looking to balance the budget overall. So doing our best to constantly revisit all of these categories to get to where we need to be in number 5 and have the least amount of impact of increase on our budget. So when we're looking at the enrollments, we consider the historic enrollments, and that comes from October 1st numbers, which we submit to PDE and we use for our federal programming as well. So for both the district and our charter schools. And our projections are based on that cohort survival method, with looking at students and how they advance or progress through our system, for example, K to 1, 1 to 2, and et cetera. What allows us to determine our school budget are allocations and operation needs, as well as our charter school budget.
I just want to add to that. So for our charter school budget, we are constantly looking at those numbers because that is such a high impact for our district. So we will look at those numbers throughout the entire process and see what designation it has for regular ed and special ed, so that we are making sure that we are budgeting enough in our overall budget for those areas. So that's a constant watch from start to finish related to the charter school enrollments.
And then as we look at the personnel, we're, looking at it all year long, but what we base it on is definitely the policy that determines our class sizes, our course selections, which is occurring at the middle school and high school levels now, and looking at what we call the simple tallies to see how many students are in each section and whether we're going to need more teachers in a certain content area over another. Changes in curriculum, as you know, we're doing a lot of curriculum development. We're looking to establish that curriculum cycle and get on a path that's going to help us to put the best curriculum in place, as well as the programs that support it. The grade realignments, as we know, we're in the midst of making those alignments right now. We'll be moving that 8th grade down back to the middle school. putting the intermediate high school back at the 9, 10, and our high school at 10, 11, and 12. So there's a lot of movement that's happening, and when doing that, we looked at the schedules and what's going to be best for our students to be successful as we make the realignments. Our incoming student kindergarten enrollments, obviously we've been putting forth a lot of effort in trying to put the word out there. Our registration is open. We have a fabulous program with fabulous resources, with fabulous teachers. So we want to continue to monitor those kindergarten enrollments, as we know we get a lot of enrollments in the middle of the summer as well. So sometimes that makes it a little bit difficult, but I think we've done pretty good job so far of maintaining and understanding the number of classes and number of sections we're going to need, and as well as aligning with the board goals that are established, by the district.
So also, as we're working through our budget, we look at expenditures by object. This is a state-required approach, and we look at the 100s, which is our salaries, 200s are the benefits, 300s are our contracted services, which include our attorneys, our auditors, substitute teaching services, the IU services, and some professional development. The 400s are for property services. That includes our cleaning services, the snow removal, custodial, lawn care, and utilities. The 500 is our other purchase services. That's our big ticket item typically. That's our charter school tuition, approved private schools, our student transportation, and general insurance falls under that object code. And 600 are our general supplies, gas, electric, books, and technology-related supplies. The 700 is equipment that's related to capital and improvements of our grounds. The 800 is other, which is our dues and fees, claims and judgments, and the interest portion of our debt. And then the last one is debt, which is the principal portion of our debt services. So now that we've kind of gone through those categories, this is looking at some of our numbers as they stand right now. So salaries and benefits, we're seeing, in compared to last year, increase of $3 million, or 4.02% increase. And that's after looking at projections, taking into consideration the collective bargaining agreements, the compensation agreements, any retirements, and of course, any new positions that come into play. This area, again, will continue to change as we continue the staffing piece, and also looking at our healthcare projections moving forward. Next is the purchase services. This is an increase of about $2.3 million, and that's reflected mainly in our charter school transportation and some special education-related areas. Next is supplies. That's another area that we're seeing about a $1.7 million increase. Next is property-related expenses, which is improvement to our grounds and replacement of equipment. That's a $750,000 increase. And you'll see that our other objects, was our interest and our debt service, one has decreased by an offsetting increase in our principal. So overall, we're seeing a $7.9 million increase over last year, or 3.41%. So next is we look at the revenues, and we know our three major areas, sources of the revenue are local, state, and federal. Obviously, there's a lot of talk around the unknowns of state and federal, so the majority of our income comes from local, unfortunately, but we still keep an eye on the state and federal as well, just to see how much we can allocate in those areas. So just touching a little bit more in detail on the local, that's going to include our current real estate tax. We look at our assessed values at a point in time against our current millage rate, which is 42.864, and then we have about a 95% collection rate. So that's how we start with our local revenues, and we'll look at that number also as we progress through this to see if there's any changes between now and passing the final budget. For our interim tax and transfer tax, interim, we look at the prior 3 years average to come up with that number. Transfer tax and delinquent taxes, we look at this prior 7 years and come up with that average and use that going forward. The LST and earned income tax, we start with our current year numbers, and we will adjust that based on updates that we receive from Keystone Collections. Earnings on investments, we will look at that based on our market conditions, and you'll see on the, when we get into these numbers, you'll see there's a decrease in that for this current school year. And then the last one is the IDEA funds that are passed through the IU. These are the state revenue sections. We receive funding for basic ed, special ed, transportation, rental and sinking funds, state property tax reduction, the Ready to Learn Block Grant, and for us, the Ready to Learn Adequacy and Tax Equity Grants. And most of these numbers come directly from PDE. And for federal, we received the title funds for 1, 2, 3, and 4. Title 1 is for improving the academic achievement of the disadvantaged. Title 2 is for preparing, training, and recruiting high-quality teachers and principals. Title 3 is for language instruction for English learners, and Title 4 is the 21st century schools. We also receive funding for access medical assistance and the medical assistance transportation. So they're the three key areas of where we receive our revenue from, and just a little bit more detail into each of those categories. Next, you'll see here our preliminary revenue projections based on those sources. As I had mentioned, local is down slightly over last year. That's just from, we did have an increase in the local revenue of about $684,000, but we're seeing a decrease in our interest of about $1.1 million. So that's where we're seeing a little decrease in that area. State, you'll see, is up by 6.2. Currently, we have just budgeted what we received as of last year. The proposed budget is not projecting a whole lot of increase here. As far as the basic ed, it's about 1.03%, or $364,764. And for regular or special ed, it's about 2.85%, or $237,485. Currently, these numbers are not reflected in our state budget because it's such a minor number. We're just waiting to see what the state budget looks like. We will adjust for that as we learn more. So for overall, we're projecting about $227 million, which is really, we're about $12.3 million short from what we projected in expenditures. So our next step would be to obviously work on balancing our budget. That's going to be the last major step in the budget process, and that is that our total planned expenditures must equal our total planned revenues. And if for some reason that's not the case, then we have to look at reducing expenditures, increasing revenues, or obviously use of our fund balance. So we will explore all of those options as we go through this process and determine what is best for the district, for the students, and obviously for our taxpayers. This here is our budget parameters, which means that based on the parameters that we passed back in January, the highest we can go is 5.10%, which is the adjusted tax increase for our district. Obviously, we would love to stay as far away from that number. As the IU had mentioned, obviously 0% is our starting point, and then we take it from there. And that's based on going through all of our revenues and expenditures through this process till the passing of the budget in June.
So with all that said, our development and timeline of the budget itself starts in January with the adopted resolution to stay within the adjusted Act 1 index of that 5.1%. Obviously, April here, we're doing our first budget update as part of the Finance Committee meeting. And then at the April 22nd meeting, we'll have a preliminary budget adoption. So that in May, we can continue our work with providing another update at our Finance Committee. And then we'll have the May 27th board meeting. If any additional updates are needed at that time, we can provide them. And then June 10th, we're looking for the special board meeting to have the final budget approval. And obviously, this must be done before that June 30th deadline. Next, we have the historical data. So we have basically those categories we were talking about in the beginning, along with other areas of our budgetary items that we need to address. That enrollment breakdown by district level, our special education per students. You heard from Dr. Fiore and Mr. Levinsky about the increase in special education services. I know, having conversations with Ms. George, we have a high number of early intervention students coming in. So we're going to have to look to what their needs are going to be and how we're going to provide them with what they need to be successful. So the funding of the charter schools, and we look at that 22-23 versus the actuals for 22-23. Can you just hit on that just for a second, explain?
Yeah, so we're waiting for the AFRs to be released for 23-24. So we're using our historical data based on what we know, 22-23 for our level of special ed, how we budgeted our charter school costs. So on the next few slides, I can share that with you, just to give you a feel. I know we always talk about how the charter school costs are so high, so we just kind of want to give you a little bit more behind that using our historical data that we have on the next few slides. So here.
And I was just going to say, the
sorry.
last part was just that millage rate, that we
Yes.
look at the historical data, but go ahead.
So this is our enrollment breakdown from 2016, 2017 through 23-24. And you'll see that it also provides to you our low income percentage as well as our special ed percentage. On average, we have about 5,624 students. You'll notice that I circled the 24.7 in special ed because I'm going to show you how that would impact our special ed cost if we were able to actually use our actual percentage versus the 16% that the funding formula currently requires us to use. So just looking at this chart, I pulled what our special ed costs were for 22-23 versus some of the charter schools that service our students within our district. And you'll see that we spend about $45,561, and the next one in line spends about $35,497. And that's also going to come into play on the next few slides as to the difference between what we're spending, what we're sending to the charter schools, and what they're spending. So here is looking at the funding for charter schools for 22-23. When we pull this together, we use our total expenditures that we budgeted from the prior year. And you'll see I put the little note over there so anybody who wants to look at this later can kind of see where we got our numbers. We are able to take some deductions from that. That includes some of our title funds at the federal level only, special ed, transportation, and debt service. That's just a few of the areas that we can take deductions. And then we take our average daily membership, and that's how we determine what our costs are per regular ed students. And then the bottom section is how we determine our cost per student for the special ed students at the 16% rate. So you'll see that we have our total special ed expenditures, and then we reduce that by the IDEA federal funds and ESSER funds. That's because the charter schools receive those funds as well, so we get to take a deduction for that. And then we have to take that by the 16%, and that gives you our funding for special ed student, which is about $35,497. And then you add the non-special ed piece to that, and you'll see it is $50,684. So again, it's $50,684 that we have to pay for special ed students. We're paying per student in our own district about $45, and the next charter school behind us is about $35. So you can kind of see how much we're spending, how much they're spending, but how much we have to send to them for any student designated as special ed. Now the next slide is going to show you if we were to use our actuals, which was the 24.77% that I had circled on the one slide. And you'll see the difference is about $13,500 between what we, using the 16% versus using the 24.7%. So, I mean, that's a significant difference. That would, help our district if we had some kind of help within the funding formula just to correct that piece. So that's all we have relating to that. And then the next slide is just our
Hang on,
millage.
Lori, can we just stop there? I just want
sure.
to say, this is something that I asked Lori to add to the budget presentation, and I really appreciate you going through that. I know that it may have been pretty technical, but the point is, I have been, for, it feels like 20 years now, hammering home that the funding formula for charter schools is wrong. Yes, yes. We've had many conversations about it, that the funding formula for charter schools is wrong. It calculates a tuition rate for special education students using an incorrect number of students that is a statewide average of 16% instead of our actual number of special education students. So when you take You know, it's like if you take 10 people out to dinner, but you, instead of dividing the bill by 10 people, you divide it by 5 people. And now everybody is paying more.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense at all, and it costs us an additional $13,000 per special education student that goes to a charter school. And that's nothing about school choice. It's nothing about parents doing what's best for their students. It's about math. And this math hurts our district.
And when they release the 24 numbers, we can update this again. It'll drive the same point home, but that way you can kind of see it in more current numbers. But again, I just had to use 2022, 23 based on the data that was available. And then the last slide here is our millage rate history. It's no secret that every year, except for 1 year, since I've been here, we've had increases. Obviously, we are going to do our best to minimize the increases as we possibly can. And that's our job to see how we can make that work amongst the district, as well as being able to, you know, provide the students the education that they need and the resources to the teachers in order for them to do that. So at this point, if there are any questions, I am open to hear them.
Okay, thank you very much. I will yield to my colleagues on the committee first to see if you have any questions.
Question.
Yeah.
When you talk about the enrollment and the projections as far as, as far as the budget, and is that when the actual enrollment numbers are taken and they take the money off the top for the budget, is that a quarterly payment?
Are you talking about for charter schools?
Yeah.
No, we pay them monthly. We pay them monthly. Every month, they send us a bill, and we submit a payment to them monthly.
So is that something, my question, I guess, is being a classroom teacher, I see the constant ebb and flow of these students coming back. Can we call that money back? Do we do that on a monthly basis, or?
That's why we constantly look at our charter school numbers, because even if kids are coming back, and if there's times where we see reductions in our enrollment, it really depends on if they're designated special ed or regular ed, because there are times where we'll see that flip, right? And so those dollars continue to increase, even though you're seeing students come back because of them switching from a regular ed student to a special ed student. So as we see, we would love to see more and more kids come back so that we can really say there's a true savings, because this is how many kids have come back. And if the seats open up, they tend to come and get more kids. So we have to figure out, that's something that we will have to figure out how to control. The formula is something we can control, but there's got to be ways that we can figure out how to bring kids back, keep kids. That's going to be a district-wide initiative for that.
I was just interested because I see at the high school, the trend, we see a lot more coming back.
Right. And that's
than
typically
perhaps
where
in
we
the-
see
in
it.
the- Yeah, so that was my question.
Yeah, sure, thank you.
Yeah, I think we'd looked at enrollment trends historically, and we see like there's an increase in enrollment for the middle school years to the charters, and then there's an increase in enrollment back to the district for
Right.
the high school years, when we were looking at the longer term trends.
Right, but that seems to be just regular ed kids.
Yeah, I think part of
Coming
the
back.
issue is that, you end up with, as Lori was saying, you end up with some of these offsets. So you might get 10 kids back, but in the
Right.
meantime, because the disparity between the regular education and the special education costs are so high, if you just have like 2 more students classified as special education, you don't even see that from a budgetary perspective.
Right. Correct.
Because now
Right.
you're paying more for 2 students, and that kind of offsets the 10 students coming back.
Right. Well, I appreciate you adding that. I think it's the first time you added that to your budget presentation.
I
So
was-
thank
I
you,
was
Liz
asked.
and Lori,
Yeah.
for doing that, because every year I wanted to see something like that. I think we talked about it over and over again. It's like, because people just,
Yeah.
especially community members, taxpayers in the district, they're saying it's school choice. It is a math problem.
Yes.
That we have to figure out, so.
Yes, that is true.
So thanks for adding that.
Sure.
Lori, one of the other questions that I get a lot is around the deductions that we're able to take for regular education. So you highlighted them as the special education costs, which of course are a deduction because we pay for
Yes.
those separately.
Correct.
But then transportation and federal funding and debt service. So can you talk about why those are excluded, and as it relates to kind of, there's this shorthand reference, people say that districts only pay 70% of their costs to charters, which is not true. And can you kind of help contextualize how those costs relate? Are they actually savings, or how does that work?
So we are responsible for transporting to the charter schools, the kids. So that is an added expense to the district. Our debt service is our debt service, so we get to remove that from the deductions from our budget. So they're line items that we're allowed to deduct. And like I said, it's also the federal portion of the title for instructional services that we're allowed to deduct. And then when it comes down to the special ed piece, we obviously take away the special ed piece from the regular ed, and that gets us down to what our cost is for the regular ed piece. So they're all district-related expenses that we get to deduct from the overall budget and bring into the calculation of how much we have to send to the charter schools.
But we're incurring those costs because we're paying
Correct.
for transportation.
That is correct.
So we still incur the costs, just,
Right.
yeah, I think
Right.
that's what you were getting at.
Yes, that is correct. We still incur the costs for that.
Yeah.
Right, so we don't get to retain money.
We do not.
We get to deduct the expenses that we still bear as a district, even as students go to a charter school. And I would
That
say
is correct.
our transportation costs actually go up because now we're busing them a longer
A
distance.
longer distance, that is correct, yes.
And we have to have more buses and more bus routes.
Yes, and the problem is that we still have issues finding drivers, so our routes go longer, or, so that takes us into a higher tier charge for transportation because we've gone over a certain amount of hours in our cost. So it is a high expense for the district. That's another area that I think that there was some conversation about. Maybe there's going to be some changes for that in the mileage. I think it's currently 10 miles. If you're, if they change it to 5, that's going to be a huge savings for our district too. So again, areas that we can't control, but it can be controlled by legislation and helping district like Coatesville.
Yeah. I think years ago, one of the reasons that idea that we didn't pay the full costs of the student when they go to a charter school came from something that was discontinued in like 2007, 2008. There used to be some reimbursements
That
from
is
the
correct.
state.
Yes.
And they were eliminated more than a decade ago.
And I know this last budget, we got a small portion for the cyber, but I know with this talks for this current state, it's already out. That's already a piece that's been taken out of this current year budget coming forward. So, and I know there's constant negotiations on what that looks like, what the charter school is going to look like talk-wise. We just don't know. So we hope for, I think it's something that they're going to have to each year fight for. And we just hope that it's something that benefits us in some way.
Yeah, I mean, all of the focus on cyber charter school costs is a distraction from kind of what drives the majority of
Yes.
this charter school costs in our budget, which are the bricks and
Brick and
mortar
mortar.
charter schools,
Yes.
enabled in part by this incorrect funding formula for special education
Yes.
students.
That is correct.
All right. Any other members of the committee have questions or comments to add?
I'll just comment that there are bills sitting in the legislature that would fix all of this, so if anyone is so inclined, contact the State Senate Education Committee, because that's
Yes.
where they're being held up. So.
Any other board members have comments or questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that each year we run into a problem that it's this game of, choice. And I just don't always think that we explain this. I think you've done a great job, but I think we need to bring it down a little bit, and whether making it's like a one-page infograph kind of showing, me, how that works. I think it's super important, so it can be on social media, because that's what, around this time, people are starting to get up in arms, how we're mismanaging funds, and how I get frustrated because we've done so well with our budget for a really long time now. We're not spending all our money on sports, like people say, or anything like that. We are trying to build our, the education here.
Yes.
And the programs here for our students. And it would be really nice if we could just do a simple thing that we're constantly during this tax, time and finalizing our budget where we're giving that information out regularly. And hopefully the communications director will be able to do that. But I mean, does that make sense, guys?
Yes.
Like I think we need to take it one step further in just promoting what we're saying so that people can understand it.
All right. Any other questions or comments on this presentation? All right. Thank you again, Lori and Dr. Rabarczyk, for the budget overview, and hopefully we'll get more clarity as we get a little further along in the process. Okay, we will now move to the agenda items. First item, that the letter A, financial statements, that the Board of School Directors approve the financial statements, bills, payables list as presented. Do you have a motion from the committee?
Motion.
Second.
Okay. Any objections to moving this item, or I'm sorry, any questions or comments on this item? Okay. Any questions or comments from the full board? Okay. Any objection to moving this to the full board agenda? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Moving on to letter B, this relates to the presentation earlier. The CCIU core services budget, that the Board of School Directors approve the 2024-2025 Chester County Intermediate Unit core services budget in the amount of $41,280,072, of which the Coatesville Area School District's projected contribution is $46,924 as presented. Do I have a motion?
You don't need a motion
Oh,
here.
sorry.
It's okay. It's been long day already.
It's been a long couple of weeks.
But I have no comments, if that's what
Okay,
you'd like to know.
Thank you. I do. Do any members of the committee have questions or comments on this item? Okay, any members of the full board? Okay. All in favor of moving this to the full board agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Letter C, the CCIU occupational education budget, that the Board of School Directors approve the 2025-2026 Chester County Intermediate Unit occupational education budget in the amount of $34,527,909, of which the Coatesville Area School District's contribution is $4,361,455 as presented. Any members of the committee have questions or comments on this item? Any members of the full board? Okay, all in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
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 Yes, okay. Letter D, preliminary budget adoption and notice of special meeting. That the Board of School Directors approve the resolution adopting the preliminary budget for the 2025-2026 fiscal year and notice of special meeting for June 10th, 2025, in accordance of Act 1 of 2006 as presented. Does any committee member have a question or comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, any member of the full board? Okay, all in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
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 Okay. Next is letter E, the GASB 75 Valuation and Related Services Agreement. This is that the Board of School Directors approve the contract with Pennsylvania Trust in an amount not to exceed $9,700 for actuarial services from Conrad Siegel to calculate GASB 75 amounts related to post-employment benefits as presented. I know in talking to Lori about this, she gave kind of a high watermark of what she thought this cost might be. She's actually expecting it to be less than the $9,700 in the proposal.
That's correct.
Any members of the committee have a question or comment on this item? Any member of the full board? All in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Next is letter F, SC View Document Management System. That the Board of School Directors approve SC View Document Management System in the amount of $16,493 for the 2025-2026 school year and $16,905 for the 2026-2027 school year as presented. The pricing is based on our PDE student count. There's a note here, basically this is part of ongoing efforts that are designed to reduce risk, increase insight, and reduce hours to support an audit. This is a program that's currently used by Great Valley School District, and so our business team is going to go over there and do an observation with them to make sure this is a good fit before we move forward. Have we done that yet?
We do have a meeting scheduled with them, so we just got that lined up.
Great. But right now, all of this is done in paper. So that creates a lot of risk. It also means that we have to go, looking in a specific file to look for a check as opposed to pulling up an electronic record. So this should reduce a lot of risk and save time and increase accountability as well. Any questions from the committee members on this item? Any questions or comments from the full board? Okay, all in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
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 Okay. Letter G, this is consent or notice with reasonable assurance to continue business with Schrader Group Architecture. There's a lot of language here, but ultimately what's happening is Schrader Group is merging with another company, Horde Copeland Matched, HCM. And so this is kind of a preliminary notice to indicate that Schrader intends to continue to work with us on our building projects, and we intend to continue to work with them on our building projects, even through the acquisition. I expect that after the close of the acquisition, that there would be an assignment of our existing contract, but this is a preliminary letter just to make sure everybody's, agreed to continue to work together. Any questions or comments from the committee on this item? Okay, any questions or comments from the full board? All in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
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 Yes. Okay. Letter H, that the Board of School Directors approve the tuition reimbursement agreement between the Coatesville Area School District and former employee Heather Messenger in the amount of $13,632 as presented. Any member of the committee have questions on this? Full board? Okay. All in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to bundle letters I and J as these both relate to extracurricular activity type items. I is advertising in the multipurpose field for lacrosse in accordance with board policy, and J is a production contract for Mean Girls at the high school, I believe. Any questions or comments on these two items? Any questions from the full board? Okay, all in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
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 Yes. Okay. We're going to bundle a lot of these, so K, L, and M are all fundraisers for different district organizations. AF, JROTC, Varsity and JV Cheerleading, and Softball Booster Club. Any questions on these three items? Any questions from the full board?
Is this just?
Why are we doing these now?
Great minds.
Yeah.
Go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah,
We've never had to have
they
a
were-
fundraiser come
They were
through the board.
submitted, so we're going to accept them this time around, but we will not see them again.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
They're-
correct.
They don't have to do that.
No, that's
Okay.
correct,
As long as,
so-
unless they're
But-
requesting space here.
Right.
Right, so
Okay.
since they were already on the agenda, we're moving forward with them, but
Okay.
you will not see them again. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Robin? Yes. Thank you. Okay, letter N is a book donation to CASD elementary schools. that the Board of School Directors approve a donation of 300 to 400 books as presented. We need to update our board policy for these types of donations to ask for them to include a list of titles. But because we haven't done that yet, administration has agreed to go through the books and have staff review them before placing them in elementary schools to ensure they're age appropriate and aligned to our curriculum and mission. So any questions or comments on this item? Any questions or comments from the full board? Okay. All in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
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 Yes. Okay. And I'm going to bundle the remaining items. Letter O, Chipotle Mexican Grill, dining out donation to North Brandywine. P, Callan Pizza and Pasta, donation to North Brandywine. Q, Adopt a Classroom, donation to Reeseville. R, East Fallowfield Shutterfly Commission. And S, North Brandywine Shutterfly Commission. Any questions or comments on these items? Any questions or comments from the full board? Okay. All in favor of moving these to the full board agenda, please say yes.
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 Okay. We now move to informational items, account codes, legal fees. I know there had been a question before as to what falls under student issues. I have a note here that student issues are related to special education agreements, generally between attorneys and family attorneys, possibly also Title IX. So that's generally what falls under that. And then we have medical claims. Is there, I don't see any old business. Is there any new business? Okay. The only thing I would mention is I've actually had this on my list for a while. We had gotten a community member asking questions about why we won't accept tickets for drama productions in cash. We always use either hometown ticketing or RevTrack, and also had asked why we have two different systems. So I would just like to bring that up to see if we can answer that question in a future meeting. Okay. Any other new business? Okay. Seeing none, we will turn to public comment, and we have Lori Shannon Bailey, who is speaking on bills to be paid, the CCIU budget, and the budget presentation.
I don't have the Midas touch. Thank you. Thank you very much for answering my question about student issues.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate that. You seem to be the only board member that is intentional in remembering the questions that I asked, so thank you. So the CCIU presentation, the marketplace budget, I believe is $260 million. That is a lot of money for a program that needs some attention. I was at an IEP meeting where all of the goals were covered at the IEP meeting except the academic goals. Now, I constantly tell these teams that I'm not an IEP specialist, I'm an advocate, and I think I'm pretty darn good advocate. But it's very, very discouraging when IEP teams intentionally, for whatever reason, don't do things right. And so when I realized what was going on, we had another IEP meeting. But this was the first time, as long as I've been doing this, which is for about 3 years now, an IEP team intentionally didn't do the academic goals. And they didn't do the academic goals because this child has significant academic deficiencies. And when I say deficient, I mean deficient. So when you think about all this money, you think, well, gee whiz, this kid really should be getting the services that he needs. Well, unfortunately, it's not happening. And then so I was at another IEP meeting, and we had asked, the attorneys had agreed that the student would be meeting with the guidance counselor. This was in February. And so unfortunately, this child is truant and has been truant for a number of years. And thanks to our interim superintendent, I became aware of a student improvement attendance plan. A student improvement attendance plan can be a part of a student's IEP. So again, the student never had such a plan, and we wanted, on behalf of the parent, we wanted this plan to be included in the IEP. The student was never called, the parent was never called when this child didn't go to school. So there's just a lot of problems. And so when we think about parent choice, when we think about, parents leaving because, teachers, the administration, people in powerful positions are not doing the things that they should be doing, we think, okay, it's time to go somewhere else where we can be treated, families can be treated, and they can be provided the education that their children needs. That's kind of where I tell a lot of my parents, because these are things that our children should not be faced with. So getting back to this $260 million budget, think about that when you go to approve this budget at the end of the month. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. The next meeting of the Finance Committee is on May 13th, 2025. And with that, I will adjourn the Finance Committee at 7:18 p.m. Yes, please, give me a break.
Good evening. So I will commence the Education Committee, no? Oh, bye. Education Committee at 7:18 p.m. Myself, Chairperson Robin Seagreaves. Absent tonight is Donna Rowland and Elgin Bailey. Steve Wilson is here, and sitting in is Liren Yako. Did I miss anyone? And we have our Representative Hannah Kepter with us today. And no Amy. Okay. First, we'll do the approval of the minutes. The minutes on for April, the minutes of March 11th, 2025. Does anyone here have any additions or deletions? Oop, we'll approve that. Thank you. And we do have some presentations this evening. So first and foremost, I'd like to welcome Lynn Mancinelli for the Core Science Resource Selection Proposal.
Good evening, School Board of Directors. I'm very excited to be here this evening to speak to you about some of the work that we have underway in science. I think, as you know, I've been able to speak a few times over the last year or two regarding changes in the state. And so those changes began with the creation of the new PA Steel standards. So really, this is a very, very exciting time in science and STEM education in Pennsylvania. The standards were released in 2022, and so next year, 25-26, is the big year when these standards will now be implemented throughout Pennsylvania. The STEEL standards will really look a bit different than the standards that we have in place now, and they more accurately give students insight into the world around them, and they ask students to actively engage in the scientific process. So as you can see here, the investigations require students to engage with questions about the world and how science and scientists have investigated and answered those questions. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on what we've been working on so far. Back in January 2024, we started an activity that was supported by the CCIU, and that's called a high-quality instructional material paper screen process. And we brought a team of teachers together from K to 12 to begin to dive into various resources that might support our STEEL standards, and just understanding how we as a team could compare and select resources for this new and exciting endeavor. Following that activity, we came together in September 2024 to actually select resources that we would like to pilot for this year. So what we did was we based that information on that paper screening that we had done the prior year, and that gave us insight into resources that we thought would work well in the district here and meet our students' needs. So then we selected for our K-5 team 2 resources, Smithsonian Science and Twig. And for our middle schools, we selected Carolina Open Sci-Ed and Twig. And we began piloting in October of this past school year. The pilot lasted all the way through March, where the teachers, we had 9 teachers at the middle school level and 12 teachers at the elementary level, pilot 1 unit in each of these new resources. The culminating activity then arrived in March 2025, where the teachers came together as a team to discuss their findings. They had completed a survey prior to getting together, and we met to discuss what we felt would be the best resource moving forward. So I just spoke to this a moment ago. We started with the elementary science pilot, 12 teachers, 2 different programs, and we had full days of training for those teachers prior to piloting, as well as some virtual check-ins. On the middle school side, there were 9 teachers, so that was all of the teachers that we have in grades 6 through 8. They all participated, and we looked at Carolina Open Sci-Ed and Twig, and again, they had a similar preparation in terms of full days of training and then additional virtual check-ins. This is a long list. I won't read through this completely, but I just wanted to give you a sense of the components that we asked teachers to reflect upon throughout their piloting so that we could come to a conclusion on what, again, would meet our students' needs best. So there were different factors that were related to lesson components, assessment, scientific inquiry and hands-on learning, and then ease of use of the resource for teachers and students, as well as supports for teachers. So there was, I believe it was about 21 different categories that the teachers considered, and they completed a survey for me where they rated those components for each program. These are the results of that survey for the elementary team. So we're comparing in blue, that's our Smithsonian Science experience, with Twig Science in green. And as you can see, Twig did lead across all categories. The biggest difference that I saw in the teachers' responses would have been in ease of use and support. But there was a consistent appreciation for the Twig dashboard, for the Twig resources, and I have to say, really, students were excited with both programs. They were excited to have a little more time in science, but this came down to teachers reflecting on what they thought supported students best. So at the elementary, we had Twig leading Smithsonian Science, and the same was true at the middle school level, with the differences being larger. Teachers really struggled, and students struggled more with the Open Sci-Ed program. And that was, Open Sci-Ed is a program that exists and is produced by various publishers. The one that we had worked with was Carolina. So we saw some consistency in teacher feedback. There were some points here and there where they certainly had appreciation for some parts of, I would say the elementary team had appreciation for some parts of Smithsonian. There were things that they did like, but when they looked as a sum total of the programs, they both selected Twig. With that information, we wanted to go forward to see what the cost would be for an adoption of Twig Science. So the quote that we have requested is a 6-year adoption. We know that, generally it is a bit more cost-effective when there's a longer duration. I think not only from a monetary perspective, but just for the investment in teacher time, teacher understanding, and growth. And I think that translates into student achievement as well. So a 6-year adoption at the elementary level for Twig Science would be $701,187.80. That includes teacher materials. These would be teacher materials purchased for every gen ed teacher that would be teaching science. We also have trade books that the students would be reading. There are science essential kits. And at this level, because we really don't have many materials in place in the elementary for science, it's been a long time. I think FOSS was a resource they used in the past. So we felt that the science kits and the refill kits would benefit the team and really be essential. This would include, lots of things are bundled. We hear that word a lot when we're looking at resources now. So this would include, at the elementary level, both digital licenses for students and teachers, of course, as well as Twig journals. We do feel that the Twig journals are very engaging for students, and they offer that opportunity to really bring a cross-disciplinary nature where the students would be writing, doing a lot of writing about science, reflecting about science, doing some of the scientific, engineering and scientific practices of graphing, analyzing, all those things, and the Twig journals would support that. Those same things are also available digitally, and so students using iPads in the elementary could also do some of this work and kind of use a balanced approach. Of course, the first year is always the most expensive because that's when a lot of those teacher materials and the original science kits and all those things would be purchased. And then in subsequent years, the cost would go down. Moving on to the middle school costs. Again, we requested information for a 6-year adoption. One of the differences we have here is we did not include a student journal for every student for all 6 years. We found that at the middle school, and I should back up and say, we did have the pleasure of visiting schools at the middle school level who were using both resources. I took a team of 4 teachers to Colonial School District in Delaware to see Open SciEd, where they were using Carolina materials. And then we also took a team, myself and 3 teachers, to Penridge School District, where they're utilizing Twig. So we got a little sense of seeing it in the classroom, which was very helpful. And we did see a lot of success at the middle school level with students being able to do a lot digitally. But we did feel that having a classroom set of journals would be beneficial. And even just a little bit beyond that, for maybe some students, could be a student with a special need that would benefit from having that journal in front of them. But we did not ask in the quote for a journal for every student for that entire time. We went with a number that would reflect, a little bit of replacement costs and those kinds of things, but generally would suffice as classroom sets. And that's sort of what we saw modeled at Penridge. That was working well for them. I did separate out the quote for refill kits because we did feel it would maybe behoove us. At the middle school level, there are some materials, differently than elementary. Again, things are relatively old, but there are some things there that we thought we wanted to kind of ask Twig, could you give us a price that you would be willing to honor, but give us a moment in this initial year to kind of go through and organize and inventory maybe what we do have available to us and determine whether we would want to go forward with Twig as the provider of those refill kits. Professional development, we know, is very, very, very important, especially it's sort of twofold here, because not only do we have new standards, and we've talked about, we've got science, technology and engineering, environmental literacy, and sustainability. It's a lot of information that we're trying to convey to our students. So for teachers, learning not only the new standards, but also how they can best utilize this platform or tool and resource in support of their students is very, very important. So what I have here is I've included a quote for a year 1. We do find that year 1 is a critical year for professional development to make sure everybody sort of gets off to the best foot. And then potentially a second year. And the reason the days are different is it would be more of a maybe job embedded in year 2, which would look a little bit different than the year 1, where it's a little bit more introductory. We're doing things more as larger groups. Some questions here, just some highlights so we can understand a little bit more about Twig and how we feel it would best support our PA Steel standard implementation. It certainly focuses on 3D learning. And if you remember from an earlier presentation I did, one of the key things about Steels is that we're stepping beyond what they would call the disciplinary core ideas, the facts, sort of the rote parts of science, right? And moving into science and engineering practices, which we often use the phrase, that's what the students will do while they're learning and applying the new standards, as well as cross-cutting concepts. And that gives students sort of a framework to connect science throughout their learning, right? All the way K up to grade 12. And there are 7 different categories. I've just given you a few examples there about what the cross-cutting concepts would look like. But they are overarching ideas that tie together aspects of the scientific disciplines, and then they help students sort of see that big picture. Disciplinary core ideas are what we typically think of, like I said, kind of like the facts, right? The enduring ideas in science. So bringing these together is very exciting. I think it's very engaging for students, but having a great resource to help do that is very critical. So some of the things that TWIG does, it is very engaging. The lessons include, so they're based on real-world STEM storylines, and of course phenomena is a big part of that. They're reflective of the world around us. So they're multimedia. You know, there are stories to be read, there are short movie clips to be seen. There are lots of things that come together. Then again, there are the hands-on activities. So the focus here would be for teaching students how to engage in new knowledge, answer and solve problems, and then make those connections between disciplines. Anytime you go to a STEELS training, you will hear about phenomena. Phenomena. That is a key part of how STEELS is focused. So phenomena is, you know, it's kind of a vague word, but it has lots of different links to science. So some things are very basic, real-world things that we're already aware of, and then some parts of phenomena are not so obvious to students. But the thing about a phenomena is that it's something that we want a student to be able to relate to, right? And to ignite their curiosity. TWIG is also accessible for all students. There are a lot of great things about it, a lot of support for our English language learners, language development, family outreach, and accessibility all around. There are multiple levels when we're talking about the level of the reading passages for students. So it's ways that students of, you know, different backgrounds and different abilities can still access the material. It's definitely integrated, and as I said earlier, we feel that the TWIG student journals would be very important because that's a way to extend this to something that is more cross-disciplinary. And the STEELS standards themselves are very cross-disciplinary. And if you look at a STEELS framework, you'll see the links to Pennsylvania-specific concerns, and you'll see links to math, history, and language arts within the STEELS standards. That's all I wanted to share with you initially about TWIG. Moving on, that was looking at K through 8. We also are interested in improving our resources, right, at the high school level. So that would be grades 9 through 12. As I mentioned earlier, we did have a team of teachers participate in the HQIM at the high school level. And we kind of went back and forth. We looked at what they already use. We did consider Open SciEd at the high school level. Some programs were still in development too. There was a lot of programs that weren't quite ready. This is a really busy time for everyone building resources and, you know, sort of trying to be ready for STEELS. But there was one resource that we found the teachers really were able to embrace, and we felt this resource would complement things that they already do well at the high school. The high school probably lends itself a little more to thinking about those disciplinary core ideas that will prepare students for careers, right, and for education, further education. So the resource that we studied, we gave teachers demo accounts. We checked in a few times. We had a few different training opportunities and some question and answers with this company. That resource is called Cognity. It is a digital resource only. But it's very flexible. So it currently includes full courses for biology, chemistry, physics, and earth and space science. The nice thing about Cognity, though, is that when a student has a license and a teacher has a license, they can access any unit across any of these 4 courses. It doesn't have to be that they're limited to, you know, if they're taking biology in 10th grade, it's not that they're only limited to those biology units. So as our curriculum team at the high school is working, they've done a lot of mapping to see what did we already cover? Like, what standards did we already cover with our existing curriculum? And there were gaps. There's many things we did cover, but then again, there were also gaps. The environmental literacy and sustainability is very new. So that's an area where often, we did not have coverage. We mapped this against Cognity and found a very nice complement with that flexibility that would allow teachers and students to sort of access the platform and the pedagogy and the instructional practices that are integrated within, for instance, TWIG and some of the other programs, but at the same time give them that flexibility to integrate with things that they already do in their classroom. Some of the labs that they do, right? Some of the things that they know are necessary, say mathematically, for students who are going to be moving through a certain course of study. We felt that this was a great complement. So it's not really replacing, it would be more supplementing. It is not nearly as expensive as the other platforms, thankfully, and that is because it's a digital subscription. You don't pay for teacher materials in this case. Every teacher is able to have an account. It's the student licenses that you'd be paying for. So for a 5-year adoption, the cost would be $119,000 with a yearly cost of $23,800. Again, in being willing to approve a 5-year adoption, we have a bit of a discount here. I did not ask for the discount of paying this all in year 1, because sometimes that's an additional discount. Like I said, the teachers here have been very positive with their feedback for this tool, and I think it would serve them very well in helping them to just improve upon what they already have in place, but be able to cover the standards that are required. The first year of professional development for Cognity is free. So they do several things that for which there's no cost. But I do feel that especially in year 2, or maybe if there was anything specific that we wanted to add in year 1, that would be beneficial. And so I had asked for a quote that totaled $11,000. Most of that happening in year 2. And that's all I have so far for my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, that's all, right? That's all, yeah?
That's it. Kind of like steals. It's a lot. It's a lot.
When we talked a bit, you were giving me an update on like the curriculum planning, because this is like the resource that will support that new curriculum. Can you just update kind of where we are and what's still needed?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of pre-planning to make sure when we're looking at what parts of these programs we would propose that we would like to adopt, that we would consistently cover all of the standards. So with the plan we have now, and I should have added, an integral part of covering STEEL's standards is also STEM, right? And so we have STEM classes, and we also have a STEM rotation in our elementary related art schedule. Those things that are already in place do a really great job of covering some of the standards. So they're a wonderful complement. Neither one does it alone, but between our proposed science work here and what we have in place, and there might be some small additions and things that we would want to make to our STEM classes, but when we put those together, we really have a very nice mapping of standards. So some of that work has been done because we didn't want to go too far down purchasing something if we weren't going to be able to cover the standards. So that's where we've started, and we've done that as well for Cognity, just to make sure if we combine that with what we already do, where do we find ourselves? There might be very few. I mean, there's many, many standards. There may be very few. I would say they would land in the environmental sciences, or I'm sorry, environmental literacy and sustainability would be the area where we may have to fill just a few things to make sure that we're covering everything. So the next step will be, we're going to be putting the standards into our framework documents, which is what's underway now for many of the disciplines. So that final documentation would probably be, it would follow, ELA is kind of somewhat, you have some things that are already board approved. We're working on the rest of ELA, social studies, and math kind of are happening now. Science would probably follow that. But we have a lot of the preliminary work done. We have the confidence that that the standards can be covered and addressed with the resources that we're interested in.
Thank you. Does anyone else on the committee have a question or? Yes, Hannah.
One thing you mentioned that I also heard from teachers was very helpful about Twig was that journal and the writing component. I know it's something that at the elementary level we've been struggling a little bit to find time to fit in that writing and to implement it solely through our ELA resources. So I think that is one thing you highlighted that the teachers really found to be helpful is giving students those authentic opportunities for writing about something they're seeing, what they're noticing, wondering why that might happen. So I think that is a very powerful part of this resource. And also your mention at the elementary level, I can definitely say those Foskets from previous science, there's a few you can find in corners and cubbies, but we are definitely in need of those new science materials for students to work with at the elementary level as well, because what's left is very scattered and very minimal. So
Very
that's
scarce.
definitely something that we need to move forward.
I appreciate that, Ms. Capter. I do feel like the writing can be an exciting part of this resource for students. As you said, their curiosity, just the real world nature. And I mean, my hope is that by fully embracing STEELS with some updated and exciting resources, that it will help just to drive some of our students forward to be able to choose some of those STEM careers, right, upon graduation. I think that the more exposure that they have to science and real-world activities as well as careers, because those sorts of things are always interspersed, I think that will serve our students well and bring some excitement to them as they're, some of the STEM careers they're challenging. There's a certain pathway that students need to kind of get on to be able to make it to the end. So getting an early start for them and really making them aware of how exciting and interesting science can be, I think would really go far in supporting students in that way.
Does anyone else have any questions? Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to also echo the fact, the journaling, I liked the journaling. I think you should even do it in middle school, honestly, because as a parent of high schoolers who have terrible handwriting, it's something I think that we're lacking nationwide. I think there is statistics on it, but I will double check that one. But I think we need to work on that a little bit more and bringing it into science.
And the good news is, of course, we can print it. Journals are very expensive at the middle school level. I mean, very expensive. They're very cool. That's why we want to have classroom sets. So students who are sitting together, they're often sitting in groups, right, in science too. They can see and they can enjoy that print material. But teachers would have the flexibility to print anything also. So maybe it wouldn't be that every day, every part of every journal, because their time is also limited.
Right.
But they would have the ability to select things and say, hey, this is an activity where I do want us all to take our time. Sometimes we're going to be putting it in the digital, right? Getting some practice with that. But I'm a firm believer in a balance of paper, pencil, and digital for math and science. So I think we'll have the opportunity to do that as well. I think there's a flexibility in the product and the digital that they can print things when they think it would be beneficial.
Yeah. And my second thing was, I love all the data that you shared with us. I think it was very extensive and informative. I do hope that as we start doing other pilots and stuff like that, that you could bring some of those teachers who piloted it.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be really helpful just to hear.
Okay.
I believe that you're sharing what they said, but it's also good to have, like, you can't remember everything, right?
Yeah. No,
So they might
point.
have some experiences that in their classroom with the pilot that, like, you're not thinking of.
Yes.
That I just think, and that goes across the board for all departments. I think that it would be really helpful that when we do these pilots that we're bringing, not all of them, but like a few of them to come and just speak about what was significant or what they didn't like. I mean, whatever.
I think we would have some willing to do that because,
Great.
they invest a lot as a pilot teacher. And this was interesting and different from our math pilot and our ELA because they got to compare the same teacher compared to programs. If you remember ELA and math, they piloted an entire year of a program. And they were wonderful sports because some of them, theirs was not, even though they liked things about it, but they unanimously sometimes chose the other. So I think that anybody who, because then you volunteer to be a pilot. Well, middle school, I had to really encourage everybody, but nobody resisted. I should say that. Elementary, they, it's just 12 out of 120.
Yeah.
So they're really very dedicated to the process.
And I know a lot of teachers that are, I know some of the elementary teachers where, at Kings High, where one of my kids goes,
Okay.
they're always excited about it and they want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I think that, again, I think you gave us a lot of information, but it would be great for the public,
Okay.
to kind of hear a few of those teachers.
Would you like me to see if anyone's interested for the board meeting?
Yeah.
Just a few. Just a few.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all welcome, but just a few. There'll probably be a few who'd be willing to speak.
I mean,
I will definitely
any
ask.
board member can push back if they want, but I just think it would be nice to hear, you're not in the classroom all the time.
Right.
So it would be really, I think if we're going to be moving forward with something, to have those teacher experiences would just be beneficial to hear.
I agree. Yeah, I know we did a mid-pilot kind of thing earlier this year where we had some really cute photos and things of the students were engaged, and the teachers were very positive. It was like a breath of fresh air, to have a little more science in their day and to have it very focused. So I think that definitely there would be a few that would be willing to come in, so I'm going to ask. Any other questions?
Just real quick,
Sure.
so the Cognity, I understand, is supplemental at the 9 through 12 levels. The TWIG would be a standalone
Yes.
curriculum? Okay, just to make sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Couple quick questions,
Sure.
I think. They're quick. Thank you for all this work. This is tremendous, and for the teachers that have worked on this. So just real quick, on the 6-year and 5-year adoption costs, just help me understand the benefit to that. I understand we have a lot of onboarding, long-term process with teachers, getting acclimated into material. How much are we saving by jumping, and I'm not looking for pennies and dollars, but
Okay.
what's, because there's also a risk factor to a 6-year or 5-year plan. So help me just understand why that risk is worth it, one question. My second question is just on the piloting process. I know you mentioned visiting 2 other schools. How much are we able to connect with districts that look like our district demographic-wise, socioeconomically? And how much have we or are we possibly able to have kind of that inter-communication with districts that are facing kind of like, again, that similar demographic? Are we able to, have we, just to get ideas specifically on the adoption of these types of curriculum in relation to our student body?
There are definitely, and I'd have to think, none in Chester County come to mind yet of final adoptions of TWIG that I know of, but I know of several districts. I believe Norristown, I'm thinking of some that have similar demographics to us. There's definitely some in Delaware County as well. We were out at Penridge, was probably, that might be a bit different from us, but there are definitely districts nearby, and the consultant with whom I work is very anxious to, tie people together and give people a chance to talk to others. So I am aware of some. One piece of feedback we get, and I wish I had them off, I'll try to get them for you too so I can list them out, because I know he says them to me, but I haven't written them all down. But one thing that he's highlighted in some schools, and I believe some schools that have demographics similar to ours, is how beneficial it can be for some of the struggling students. Because it's a bit more engaging for them. Sometimes they're coming in at a little bit more of an even playing field as far as just learning about the world around them. They all have different experiences with, certainly with background knowledge, but I know that they have shared with me schools who feel that some of their other scores, even in ELA or math, maybe have been elevated because of sort of reinvigorating instruction by including that science. So I will get, the first ones that come to mind certainly is Norristown, but I know there's others that are close by as well. As far as the savings, now, I know, and I have the Cognity very specifically called out. Cognity, it is sort of, I would say $1 to $2 to $3 savings when you're able to do the 5-year contract, per student license. We're purchasing 1,400. The proposal would be for 1,400 licenses, and Cognity does have a 5% buffer, I forget what, so that if we needed to go up to 1470, there would be no additional cost. You know, if something about, you know, year to year, sometimes your enrollment changes a little bit, or the number of students enrolled in a particular course, as that might change. So they give a little buffer there, but we're saving, so it's really a couple $1,000s per year, I believe, in going to, it's probably 3,000 to 4,000, but I can get you the specific numbers. I know I have those, in going to the longer term adoption. I guess, and it is a possibility of doing 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Some of the challenges, I feel like sometimes it's intimidating for the teachers to think that we are diving into something and kind of going full force. Like, so many of these new programs, it's amazing how much professional learning a teacher themselves can sort of investigate, right? Because it's a digital platform. So there'll be webinars, right? There will be videos. There will be so many things. It's a bit overwhelming, really, for a teacher to dive into all those things. But when we put that level of training into the teachers and then have programs that have significant opportunities for professional learning and kind of deepening their knowledge, I think that when we go less than, say, 3 years or something, we kind of have, I think it would be, the buy-in from teachers would be a little more difficult. Not that they wouldn't, of course they're going to do that, but I think to get them to go deeper and maybe sort of really explore, it's truly amazing, and not just any one of these programs, but today, with digital platforms, it really is amazing how many resources there are. So we want to help teachers kind of find, like in mathematics, for instance, we're helping them find what works best for them. There's a plethora on Envision that they can use, but they wouldn't be able to use them all, right? So kind of helping them to identify the things that they can use best to support their students. That's a task unto itself. So I think having teachers have an extended time to really dive in, understand the data when there's data that's related, and kind of find ways to just improve upon their implementation and their instruction each year really goes very far for the teachers. So I think that's why I started from that perspective. It was a little bit, I'm gonna be honest, a little bit more from that perspective as compared to the specific financial savings. But there are savings, you know, the publishers also do offer some form of savings when you're willing to do an extended contract. I don't know offhand. The twig is less obvious to me, so I would have to look to get you, if you wanted to know a little bit more, quantify it.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to send you off doing more work unnecessarily. I think my interest is more, because again, it doesn't sound like a lot of money. My interest is more around the ability to pivot. If we need to pivot, if we, for instance, learn 3 years in that our lower performing students really aren't closing achievement gaps, do we have the ability to pivot? That's, so money to dollars, that makes sense, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think my concern more falls around the latter of what I just said, is that the opportunities to pivot if our lower performing students aren't closing those achievement gaps. So
I do have a lot of confidence that it's a very comprehensive, and the fact that TWIG has so many resources for struggling students or EL or, you know, just ways to sort of go above and beyond, I do feel like that's a real plus. And a lot of them do have that. I'm not saying that this is the only one that does, but we were able to see that in TWIG. So I think the team, and again, they might have some insight, and I can ask them as well. A concern hasn't come from the team at all about, are we going to be stuck with this? You know, like, what if we don't like this? Like, they haven't responded in that way at all. I think sometimes there is appreciation for, again, them having that ability to kind of craft and fine-tune and improve upon, just like everything, you know, you do a little bit better year 2, you do even a little bit better year 3, and I'm thinking that probably might be where their minds are, but I'll ask them that as well. And if we get a few to come speak with us later in the month, they might be able to speak to that. Did I answer your questions?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, thank you. Yep.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have a question?
No, I just want to thank Ms. Mancinelli and the teachers, and obviously the students who are part of the pilot as well, because they put a lot of time and effort into it. And I mean, there's been some very good results, K to 12, really, in understanding and participating in. This is a huge task that's put upon us as these new SEAL standards are coming into play. A lot of districts, I feel like, we're a big step ahead of where other districts are in regards to being prepared to implement standards next year, so.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's one presentation down. We have a second presentation going over special education. Brenda.
Good evening. I'm here to do a kind of 30,000-foot overview of our special ed plan. I don't know if you've seen it at all on the website, but it's very lengthy and it's rather complicated. So we're going to try to keep it a little bit brief tonight. I want to begin by saying that the numbers that you'll see are kind of alarming, but they're also from 22-23 data, which includes data from 1920 and 2021. So it's not up-to-date data, but it's the data that we have to use to do the report. I just wanted to give a little bit of background real quickly about why we even do this report. It's mandated by the state, but it's also coming down from the federal government. And the whole goal of the report is for schools to be looking how to improve our graduation rates. I made a list of what are the indicators that are listed in the report. As we go through this, I'm not going to read through all of the definitions of what those indicators are. That would take a lot of time, but they're there for you guys to go back to. So we have 14 indicators that we are looking at. We have the graduation rate, we have dropout rate, student participation and performance on statewide assessments, suspension and expulsion rates, educational placement, school facilitated parent involvement, disproportionate representation by race and ethnicity, disproportionate representation by race, ethnicity, and disability categories, timelines for initial evaluations, IEP, post-secondary transition goals and services, and post-secondary outcomes. This data is obtained by a number of different sources, and so I included that on the report, which makes it difficult to sometimes compare the raw numbers that we get from our district to the way that they present numbers to us that we have to report on, because some of those numbers are like our graduation rate. It's not just the graduation rate. There's a formula that includes our students that go on beyond their 12th grade year and students that get their GEDs and things like that. So it's not just a pure number. Indicators defined are included that you can go back and take a look at that, and I'll explain a little bit as we go through. When we get to look at the numbers, you will see that there's an SPP target rate. So that performance, or that rate is our state performance, and that comes down from the federal government, right? That's what they're comparing their performance to. And then there's that state data, and then there's the LEA data, which is us. And then there's a conclusion that goes with that that simply means, did we meet our target or did we not meet our target? Our 2022-2023 data, you can see our district profile. I'm just going to go straight down to the percentage of special ed students. At that point was 29.2%, and the state comparison was 19.3%. Our 24-25 data is 28.8%. I don't have 24-25 data from the state, but I do have the 23-24 data, which was 20.1%. Our 24-25 data is based on our child count that we just recently did. All right, if you look at, these are the areas that we have been targeted for with the data, again, from the 22-23 school year, and then some of that data from 1920 and 2021. The blue is what the state had to meet, the green is the state data, and then the red is our data. So we'll just kind of focus on the green and the red. We met our graduation data indicator, or our indicator for graduation, but it was by like 1%. So I added it in here so that we can address that as well, because I'd like to get a little bit above that. So I think that we want to continue certainly working on that. Dropout rate has been a concern, 12% for the state, 14% for the district. Our assessment indicator, I put a range in here, only for space. So it ranges from ELA, math, 4th, 8th, and 11th grades. And we had a range of participation from, our red is 83.2 to 93.7, from 85% to 93.1, which is the state level. So you can see that comparison. Our suspension and expulsion rate, we did not meet that category for students with special education. We did meet the category for disproportionality by race. Education requirements. This is our least restrictive environment. And what that talks about are how many kids are educated in the regular ed classroom for 80% or more of the day. And then there's 40% or more. We met that target. We did not meet the inside the classroom more, which means we're pulling more kids out for instruction in a separate setting, not out of the building, but out of the classroom. And then special education in other settings, which is a number that we are really working on. The state level is the target for the federal government is 4.4%. We are at 14.3%. And so moving students out of our district into outside placements is something that we really have to work hard to correct. Parent involvement, we are at 37.5%, the state 45.6%. Timely evaluations, we are at 85.6%. This is again 22-23 data. The state being at 94.2%. I'm happy to say that we just looked at our numbers. This is something that we can just keep track of here. And as of today, we were at 95.1% with our timely evaluation. So that's greatly improved. The Indicator 13 training, the state is at 81.1%, Indicator 13 being the transition services, and we were at 38.5. And what this comes from, I'll just explain that a little bit, is there's a whole checklist of things that you have to get every single point on the checklist correct. 100% is the goal. And if you miss, one piece, then it doesn't count towards being 100%. So we only had 38.5% of our IEPs in 2022 that met that requirement. Now, this year, we participated in Indicator 13 training. And so we are meeting next week with the IU to look at their baseline data that they got whenever we started the training this year. And then we will look at it again after we go through the corrective action process with the IU, looking at the sample IEPs that we reviewed in order to get that number. And then post-school outcomes talks about there are surveys. These surveys come in a cycle, so we haven't done ours since 1920 or 2021. And what that talks about is when students leave the district, are they either employed or are they in a post-secondary program, whether that's a college or a two-year school or whatever. And so the state was at 76.1 and we were at 65% in 2022. So some of these numbers I can update sooner than later, but some of them I have to wait for the state reports to come out so that we can actually compare the reports so that they're reporting the same information in the same format. I did a comparison table so that you can look at the 3 years, and I won't go through all of that again, but you can see, kind of like the trend that's been happening here. And again, you will see in our Indicator 5, which is our least restrictive environment, we did go down a little bit in that again because we are pulling students out into more intensive reading and math supports that we didn't have in place before. So that's having an impact on that. At the same time, bringing students back from out of the district and creating some specialized classrooms in the district has helped with kind of moving us in a little bit of a better place with our students being educated outside of the district. So I just want to give a little bit of history about, where we have come. I came into this position in either 1920 or 2021. It was right after COVID or kind of during COVID when we were bringing kids back. I was coming into it at a point where we did not have pull-out programs for students. All of our specialized classrooms, all of those things had pretty much been dismantled. And so all students were receiving basically an itinerant level of support, and there was one place for them to go, which was in an extensions class. The extensions class really did not address specific student needs. It really addressed being able to support the student, like when they went to their ELA class or another, math class or whatever, they would come to an extensions class and get extra support so they could essentially pass that class. But when we brought in a universal screener, what we found was that there were so many students who had deficit skills, like significant deficits. And in order for them to be able to continue to progress in the general ed curriculum, we had to close those gaps. And so we created tiered levels of service so that we could use the data, put students in the correct programs, give them their more intensive supports and specialized programs, and then get them back out into the classroom as soon as we can. But it's not an overnight solution. It takes time for that to happen. And so you can see that we've added lots and lots of supports here as we've gone through this 2 or 3 year period to make sure that we can provide what students are needed. Last year, the most recent, we added our transition coordinator. So we do have a specific plan for addressing those IEPs that are really struggling to get to us where we need to be. 100% is a challenge. I don't know how we're going to get to 100%, to be honest with you, but we can certainly get closer than we are. We did create a PAYS lab this year, which is like a vocational exploratory kind of an assessment that we were bringing kids in to that program. They go through a number of shops and things like that to figure out what kinds of activities or jobs they might really be interested in. What do they have a desire to do? What do they have a talent for? And so it gives them that opportunity to try those things so that we can help guide them into some of those other post-school opportunities that may really mean something to them rather than, I just have to get a job. But you don't want to have to live your life just having a job. Let's try to get you a job with something that you would enjoy. So we're working on that. We have added behavioral supports to all of the buildings, including climate coaches to help with climate and culture in the buildings. We've had mental health supports. All of our buildings have mental health supports. Our school psychologist positions, that has been a tough one for everybody, not just us, but we haven't been able to fill some positions with our school psychologists. And so we contract out a lot to be able to get the assessments done. Like I said, this year we had some really good things happen, so we got up to 95.1%. But we also completed with our school psychologists, last year it was a total of 667 reports. And this year, right now, we're up to 685 reports. And I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but one report takes about 10 hours to do, 10 to 12 hours per report. So that's a lot of writing and a lot of testing and meeting with kids and observations. And I also think it's important to know that we're not just doing reports for the school district. We are doing reports for all of our non-pub schools, like our Catholic schools and homeschool students and things like that. So it's not just students that are within the district. The other thing I wanted to add was we are adding this. I think I just am bringing it up because I think it's something that we see a lot in special education where our students are struggling to focus and organize, be able to plan, pay attention in class and things like that. So we are adding an executive functioning course at the middle school, which is the perfect time to do it. And then we have been working on developing these social emotional programs from K to 12, really looking at how we can support students in their social skills. Let me see. The next part is the alignment that I wanted to talk about. So for a long time, we looked at, this is called a special ed plan, but special ed is not its own separate entity. Special ed is a program within a larger program, being our entire system. And so I'm excited this year because we have done so many things over the past couple of years to create that alignment between regular education and special education, which helps to create a space for all of our students to be able to be part of the gen ed curriculum. So I just listed some things out. We adopted our core curriculum for reading. We adopted core curriculum for math. District implemented social emotional screener in grades K to 7. We have restorative practices training. We had restorative justice training for our administrators. We've gotten restorative practice coaches in the buildings to support that program. We have established building teams focused on acceptance and belonging, ongoing professional development with reading, letters, training, math, all of those kinds of things. Initiation and ongoing development of our MTSS program in all the buildings, and then initiation and ongoing development of PBIS in the buildings. So MTSS helping with student learning, being able to access their education, trying to remove some of those barriers and provide additional support. And then the PBIS, again, looking at behavior, keeping students as part of that curriculum, as part of their school, and helping them to feel successful there as well, acknowledging their accomplishments. The supports and services, I don't know if I need to read through all of this. It'll be here for you guys to go back and look at it. So there's a lot you can see of supports and services that we have in place and some that we've added over the past couple of years. And then this part I think is also really important that I want to talk about because this is where you see everything is coming together. So in the plan, there are some sections that are required. Training with autism is required, but we've been doing that since we brought back our VB classroom, verbal behavior classrooms in 2021. And we've been part of the initiative, the autism initiative with Patan. And so we've partnered with Patan and the IU to come in with learning coaches and things like that. And that's been ongoing since we first brought those programs back. Positive behavior supports is not a special ed program, it's a district program. And so there'll be training that continues with that. Paraprofessional, non-certified support staff training, we're required to add that to it. We sometimes provide our own training. Other times we have paras participate with training that the IU offers, some online training, some in-person training, so we give them a variety so that they can get their hours in. They need to have their 20 hours to be highly qualified. The transition training, planning, and programming. Like I said, we started that this year, but it's not a one-year process. It will continue, and we will continue to monitor till we try to get to that 100%. Might be a long time, but we're going to keep working at it. Our science of literacy training, the reading training, again, that's part of something that we have to do, but we're already doing it. It wasn't anything new for us because we had already started that process. Our parent training, we've done parent trainings in a number of different ways. We've done them through Zoom. We've had people come in. To be honest with you, our attendance is not very good for a lot of our trainings. We've connected with the IU to offer, more of a variety of parent trainings. So we'll continue to work on that and get input back from people as to how can we better support you and how can we get that training to you. And then the last two are professional development that I created for this plan. And I worked with our curriculum team to help to develop this because, again, we want it to be aligned. And so when we talk about what are some things that are happening or not happening that make it difficult for our special ed students to be successful in the gen ed classroom, we looked at that. And so in trying to determine what would give us the biggest bang for our buck, basically what's going to get us there the fastest, is that I created a training called Creating Classrooms for All Students, and the focus of that training is on differentiation and classroom management. And so together, we'll put those sessions together and what that would look like. Again, this is over a 3-year period, and so we won't get it all done in the first year, but we will continue working on it. And my guess is that when we go into the next cycle with the next plan, we'll still continue to work on that and just get better and better at it. I think once you see that, or once we start doing that, our numbers are high in special ed. So you may see some of those numbers coming down because then we can start looking at a systemic approach and talking about over-identification. And if we're looking at the systemic approach and we're addressing the needs of all students, you're always going to have students that need more than what can be provided in that gen ed classroom or even within that gen ed curriculum. But we're looking at what we can do to make the most kids the most successful with their peers without having to take them out of that setting. So as this last training, it includes teachers, administrators, school psychologists, because I want them to be looking in those reports that they're doing, and I want them to be able to see if they can find bias. Can they find patterns that, you know, maybe it's something within our curriculum, even if it's just for, you know, our demographic, the people that are here, the students that we have. Maybe there's something that we need to add to that curriculum that we're missing. Because if you can see a trend and there's a lot of students that are showing the same deficit, it shows that we need to do a little something to address that one piece. So if we put all of those things together, I think that we can try to close the gap for a lot of our students. Hopefully over time, you know, we won't have to place students in special education. A lot of times they go to special ed because that's the only place they can go to get the supports that they need. But as we move along, we're trying to build these things in for all students. So I'm hoping that in the next few years, we're going to see a big change. That's the goal. And the most exciting thing, again, is the alignment of what we're doing for all kids. I have to thank Tony for that, and I want to thank the curriculum department and pupil services, because it's really been a team effort to come up with these things. And then the next thing is we have special ed plan review dates. So there's one tomorrow night. I just want to make sure everyone is clear about this. There was a change in the venue. We had intended to do it at the Benner Building, but I was notified today that we can't use the Benner Building. So we're going to bring it here, and we'll put out an announcement tomorrow morning to make sure everybody's aware of it. We did have a few people sign up, but we'll put it out so that everybody is aware to come here to the admin building. We already had one scheduled for the 15th here at the admin building, and then we have another one scheduled for the 23rd at the intermediate high school. So that's it. Any questions or comments? There's a lot more to the plan. I just wanted to give you a kind of an overview so that you have an idea of what that's all about.
Thank you for the overview.
It was a lot, I know, but
It's a lot. Now, when you say like you can see it, it's available, where can people easily see it, and is it public?
yeah, it's on the website. If you go
I
right,
just tried looking for it. I just, like, where on the website, do you know? I just want to know where it is.
yeah, I mean, I know that when we put it up, it's right on the front, like right at the beginning where you go into it. It may have moved at this point.
Under news. Mine looks so different than that. Okay.
We can repost it again tomorrow, so maybe it'll bring it back up front.
I just think it's important to get the information out. I mean, there's a lot of things that were brought up that are things we hear. We're acknowledging those things. We're working on improving those things.
Right.
And it's not like denial, you know, it's like, no, we're not doing that. Yeah, we do,
Right.
we recognize that's
Right.
an issue, and here's our plan to build our services back up and get our special education plan in order.
Right.
It's on the front web,
I know, I don't,
website. If you scroll down into the news section,
yep,
it's right there.
news.
Special education plan review, if you click on that
Oh, there it is.
news item, it's linked in that.
I was trying to use the tabs, and I had to scroll I got you. Did you? Okay. All right. Let's not bring out my terrible technology skills.
So I will say that when we do the dates, whenever people come, it'll be more in-depth, but for the sake
Wow.
of time, I wanted to give you the 30,000-foot view.
And you said there was one already, was it attended?
No, it's tomorrow night.
Oh, it's tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow's the first one.
Yeah.
Okay. But there are some people who are registered.
Right. So, yeah, people have signed up for all of them,
Oh, good.
so we'll see. I
Awesome.
hope.
I'm sure people have questions, or are you too tired now? Steve, I know you have questions. Go ahead. No, I'm okay. I mean, I get the opportunity to read it in advance. I don't have a question. No one? I knew somebody.
I mean,
would.
I don't necessarily have questions, I more have remarks, like, this is really hard. to look at how far away we are from these benchmarks and knowing what a like a quarter of our students, more than a quarter of our students fall into this population. And I recognize that, as you said, this data is stale, and you talked about some of the things that we're doing. But while we wait to find out if what we're doing is working, students are getting older, and some of them are aging out of the system. And so I guess my question, if there is one, or my urging to you is, like, what can we do to make sure that while we try to address the gaps or deficiencies that are being offered, have been historically offered to our students with extraordinary needs, how can we make sure that we are seeing that progress in real time, that we know we're on the right track? Because if we, do a retrospective 5 years from now, and we find that it wasn't working the way that we hoped it would, that's a lot of children that we've failed in that time.
So there are natural processes within the special ed programs, and those are, with students that have IEPs, we're looking at those goals that are in the IEPs, and we progress monitor them on a regular basis. We have the data that we're looking at to write the goals and to make sure that students are moving forward and making progress. The other thing that we did talk about, that together I think that we can look at our numbers, our PSSA numbers and our Keystone numbers, and we can pull out that data. We can take out different populations of students and see how they're doing. And I think that we need to be doing that all along. Now, that doesn't necessarily align with all of the stuff that's in this data, but we can certainly do that to make sure that we're looking at students by building, we're looking at students by subject, by grade level and things like that, and we can address those particular situations. So you have the IEP process, but you also have your district scores with state testing and, that sort of thing. And I think that those are the indicators that we can use to make sure that students are making progress.
Thank you. One more question. We were looking at district statistics earlier as part of the budget presentation, I think it was, and we have, almost 60% of our students are socioeconomic disadvantaged. I think even for students who are not from a family that has socioeconomic disadvantages, the IEP process is really intimidating. But certainly for people who, might be single parent family, working 2 jobs, worried about just how do you, get a roof over your kids' heads and food on the table, spending discretionary time to figure out the IEP process is really difficult, but they are often the best source of information and advocacy for their students. So are we doing anything to help educate and equip parents and guardians with information that will help them be an active and integral part of their students' learning process and the IEP process?
So parents they're a necessary part of the IEP team. COVID has actually helped us in one way, in that when we couldn't meet in person, we started using Zoom. And so many more of our parents engage now that we have Zoom because they can take a lunch break or whatever. And we do our best to schedule our meetings around their schedule so that they can be here. And we do take the effort to explain, rather than just use a lot of educational jargon and things like that. We do try to explain to parents. We offer the opportunity, to give them, personal time so that we can explain it more thoroughly. Sometimes at an IEP meeting with everybody sitting around, that's really not the time to do that because it's kind of nerve-wracking. We did try to do parent training so that we could maybe give people more information about the IEP process and what all of that means. It's hard to get parents to engage in that. But we'll continue trying. We certainly keep on trying. Another part in the special ed process in the IEP is a place for parent input. And the parent input is not necessarily a place for the parent to express their distaste or whatever, for something that they're not happy with, we want to hear about that and we want to work it out, not just put it in the parent communication piece. We want to actually know about it so we can fix it. But it is their opportunity to express whatever concerns that they have. They may see things that we don't necessarily see in school. And so when they share that with us, then we can take a look at it and we can try to create that homeschool connection. If it's not something that we can do, there may be other barriers that are preventing that student from either coming to school or being able to participate, like they fall asleep during the school day, or they're upset during the school day. They're not able to attend. We don't always know the answers, and sometimes kids don't want to tell us that. And so getting that input from the parent who's willing to share things is very, very helpful, and it helps us to either be able to address it in school or to offer resources to the parents so that they can address it at home. So.
Thank you, Ms. George.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And then third, I think we just are doing a little update on the Student Code of Conduct progress. Mrs. Snyder.
Good evening, everyone. It surely feels like tomorrow already. I just want to speak very briefly on the annual code of conduct that we're required to do per board policy. So the process started probably in February with the beginning stages of planning, and we had community sessions that were offered both in person and via Zoom. In addition to that, I had opportunity to hold sessions with both elementary and secondary teachers, and had wonderful conversations with our teaching staff who brought forth some good suggestions on process and things like that. It wasn't necessarily about code of conduct. I guess it was, but not in that change this and this language, but more about process and how, you handle that. And then I was able, lastly, to meet with our admin team and go through some of the more specific language and changes that I was proposing. And there really isn't much. I'll give you a quick preview. There's really not much changes in language because I feel like we did a really thorough job last year when we worked with the Education Law Center. A lot of the big lifts were done last year. But there were some things that were hanging out there that I was charged with, and, putting the code in simpler language was one of them, reducing the length of it. So I've done that, and then I'm also working on the skeletal outline of a parent and student handbook for both elementary and secondary, and then revamping a little bit of our admin toolkit. So my goal now moving forward, I had a great conversation. Well, I thought it was great, very helpful for me with our board and executive session last night, and I appreciate the conversation that happened yesterday. So our goal is now to complete my homework, which I did, and I sent to Dr. Abarchek tonight about just the small things that I needed to change. And then we'll put the draft up for a 30-day review and hopefully bring it before the Education Committee to have a presentation on what was changed in the Code of Conduct and then move it for approval, hopefully by May. So that is the process that we went through. Any questions that I can answer on the process?
No, thank you very much, and we're definitely ahead of the game this year.
Thanks.
So thank you for doing all that work, and just the brief outline that we saw yesterday was really, really easy to read, much more user-friendly. So thank you for all your work.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? All right. Thank you very much. I guess we'll actually do the agenda now. What's that? I'm gonna bundle a bunch. Yep. Okay. So as we begin, A, B, C, and D, I believe, is a good use of bundling. We have mostly consumables for the testing supplies for school psychologists, multi-health systems quote for school psychologists, testing supplies for the 2025-26 school year. B, The Parent quote for school psychologist testing supplies. C, Pearson quote for school psychologist testing supplies in, that was right, A, B, C, and D. The WPS quote for school psychologist testing supplies. Is there anyone on the committee that has any questions or comments regarding these items? No? Anyone on the full board? Seeing none, if you agree to move this forward, please say yes.
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 Yes. Are we done? Okay. Then E is a little bit of a standalone. Bear with me. And it's that the Board of School Directors approve the ESY rate for Cottage 7 at the rate of $125 per diem, or $2,500 per student for the entire program to be invoiced July 31st, 2025. Do we have any idea how many students that is around sometimes at Cottage 7? Sorry.
Mrs. George, how many students generally go to Cottage 7 for ESY? Is that 8 right now?
Okay. All right. Does anyone on the committee have any questions about this item? No? Anyone on the full board? No? If you'd like to pass it on, say yes.
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 Yes. And then I will bundle F and G, since we had an opportunity to these are the development training for restorative practices. So F is that the Board of School Directors approve the contract with the CCIU to provide professional development and training from June 1st to August 31st for restorative practices. And then G is that the school board directors approve the contract to CCIU to provide restorative practices coaching and consultative services as defined in the quote and contract. Does anyone have questions about these services? On the committee, anyone on the full board? No. If you'd like to move those forward, please say yes.
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 Yes. Okay, and then we have H, L, and M. I know they're a little spread apart, but they're all the things that Ms. Manzanelli reviewed with us this evening. So H is the Board of HK? Well, let's see, H is?
Yes, HKL.
HKL, sorry about that. Oh. My goodness. H is Cognitive Digital Resource quote, that the Board of School Directors approves the adoption of Cognitive Digital Resources and quote for PD for the 25-26 year as presented. And then K, this is confusing. No, on my agenda, K is an early graduation.
Online, it's different than the.
Online, it's different? Oh, Lordy, all right. That's okay, I have it online too. I'll prefer. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. Don't laugh at me. H, K. Okay, K and L, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then K is the Board of School Directors approve the adoption of the K-5 TWIG 6-year quote as presented. And then L is the TWIG 6 to 8 quote for 6 years starting 25-26. Does anyone have any questions about those? No?
No.
Anyone on the full board? No? Then we can move those forward. Please say yes.
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 Yes. And now I'm going to be all jacked up. I got to go back.
I and J.
All right. Yep. Okay, so I, this is that the Board of School Directors approve the addition of honors level environmental science course to the cash course selection guide approved on January 28th of 2025. Does anyone have any questions about that on the committee?
No.
No? I love having additional rigor added to these for options. So anyone on the full board have questions?
Just a question. We currently have, I think, an AP Environmental Science course, would this doesn't replace that, we would still also offer AP? Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, if you agree to move this on, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Now I'm at J. And this is executive content for a student to be provided the approval to graduate early as presented. Does anyone, well, we really can't talk about it, but it's student-centered. So if anyone, if you agree to move this forward, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. M. The East Fallowfield rental agreement, that the Board of School Directors approve this rental for PBIS Reward Day at East Fallowfield Elementary School, May 28th, 2025, as presented. Does anyone have any questions on the committee? No? Anyone on the full board? Nope. If you'd like to move this forward, please say yes.
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 Yes. Okay. The title, where I'm in N, that the Board of School Directors approve the renewal for Crate Federal Documentation District and 9 Campus as presented. Does anyone have questions about this item? No? Anyone on the full board? No. If you'd like to move this forward, please say yes.
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 Yes. We have the letter O, that the Board of School Directors approve the contract agreement with the CCIU for an instructional coach at elementary and middle schools as presented. Does anyone have any questions about this one? No. Anyone on the full board have questions?
Can I just make a brief comment?
Yes.
I just want to clarify, so, the Title I crate is coming out of federal funding, just so everyone's aware. It comes out of Title I. And the one for the instructional coach for the elementary and middle schools is coming out of CSI money, school improvement funds.
Okay, so if you'd like to move those forward, please say yes.
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 Yes. Okay. And we have letter P, that the Board of School Directors approve the purchase of the African American Journey AP edition as presented. This is exciting. Does anyone have anything to ask? Any questions on the committee? No? Anyone on the full board? Okay, if you'd like to move this forward, please say yes.
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 Okay. We have Q is the movie licensing for all 5 elementary schools in the amount of 561 apiece. Does anyone have any questions on the committee? Nope. Anyone on the full board? Then if you agree to move this forward, please say yes.
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 Yes. Okay, we have our summer reading books. That the Board of School Directors approve the purchase of summer reading books for elementary schools as presented. Does anyone on the committee have questions? Anyone on the full board? Fantastic. If you'd like to move this forward, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Letter S, that the Board of School Directors approve the agreement with CCIU for professional development for the 25-26 school year as presented. This is for the literacy programs. Does anyone have any questions regarding these items? Nope. Anyone on the full board? Okay. If you agree to move forward, please say yes.
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 Yes. We're almost there. We have 2 MOUs, and we can certainly bundle these, so T and U. Letter T is that the Board of School Directors approve the special ed FTE MOU as presented, and then U is the reading specialist MOU. Dr. Roberczyk, is there anything that you could add?
Sure. So the MOU for the reading specialist is basically that we hire third-party contracted reading specialists. So really, this is just indicating the separation between those that are hired by the school district and those that are hired by a contract. That those by the those in the district go into the collective bargaining agreement. Those in the that are contracted do not. And then the one for the special ed FTEs, these are, as you know, we've had some struggles at the high school level of bringing on some special ed teachers at this time. So it's the teachers that are doing additional caseloads of collecting data, writing reports, having IEP meetings would be paid a stipend based on the hourly rate that we charge, or that we allow of $38 an hour.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions on the committee? Anyone else on the full board? No? If you'd like to move that forward, please say yes.
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 Okay, and then finally, letter V. This is that the Board of School Directors approve the contract for an independent education evaluation for student 1009379. Is there any objections or comments anyone would like to make? No? Then if you agree to move this forward, please say yes.
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 Yes. Fantastic. And then we do have our informational items, as always, the enrollment report as of March 31st, 2025. There's no old business. I don't have any new business. Does anyone have any new business? No? And then we'll move to public comment. I'm gonna guess. Miss Lori Shannon-Bailey.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For the restorative practice proposal, I guess I don't quite understand why we have so many expulsions. I believe I saw at the Code of Conduct training, we've had 100 expulsions this past school year. And I understand you all are not doing these, you're not addressing these at the school board meetings anymore, but I don't understand why so many students are being expelled or severely disciplined to the point that they're being taken out of school when we're having all of this training. So I think it would benefit the community if we spend some time learning more about this training. This is $12,000, and I know we've approved more. But is the training working? I just am concerned about, you know, how is this training benefiting the district? And how is it that, you know, we're still having, I know the numbers have come down, but it doesn't seem like they've come down quite a bit. 100 students is a lot. So with the special education presentation, I spent some time looking at the plan. Couple of boards prior to you all were kind enough to have a special education task force, which I was privileged to be a part of. There is a section entitled School District Areas of Improvement and Planning Indicator. It is surprisingly or not surprisingly suspension/expulsion by race, ethnicity. It's indicator 4B. Improvement and planning activity, implementation of progressive discipline within the Student Code of Conduct, implementation of restorative practices beginning with the 22-23 school year, implementation of professional development, building trauma-sensitive schools, implementation of MTSS grades K through 7, 2021-22 school year, implementation of MTSS grades 8 through 12, 2022-23 school year, PBIS implemented in grades K through 12. Let's see here. There's a page that's entitled Non-Residential Student Oversight. It's not really easy to read. There looks like it's like 1 million words on the page. It's just a lot of information. It's not really easy to read. I know it's in the process of being revised. There's another section here. I've got to take my glasses off. Significant disproportionality placement, significant disproportionality, district flag for significant disproportionality in this area. Target, identify trends, improvement, planning, and activities. Anyway, lots of information on that plan if you all are interested in taking a deep dive.
Thank you. Is there any other comments from the board? No? Okay, then I'd like to adjourn the committee meeting at 8:46 PM.
Thank you. All right, I'm calling to order the Operations Committee meeting at 8:46 PM. God help us all. I recognize, I'm sitting in for Chairperson Elgin Bailey. I recognize that Liren Yako and Steve Wilson are sitting in for Directors Holly Shrest and Shauna Maxwell, who are excused. We will start with the approval of the minutes for March 11th, 2025. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions from the minutes? Seeing none, we will approve the minutes and they will be placed on file. We have no presentations. So we will proceed with the agenda, starting with items A and B. Krupansky Fencing Company, LLC, at the main campus, stadium fence and gate repairs for $1,400 and $3,500. Does any member of the committee have questions or comments on these items? Any members of the full board? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor of moving these to the full board agenda, please say yes.
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 Okay. Letter C, Bristol Callan Elementary asbestos for a total cost of $9,800. Any questions from the committee? From the full board? Seeing none, all in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. This one I did want to handle separately. Letter D, Roofing Resources Senior High School roof replacement. Roof replacement of areas 7 and 15 at the senior high school in a total of 3 phases for a total cost of $1,124,798. My understanding is that this is the last phase of a 5-year plan we started in 2020?
Correct.
Okay. What funds does this come out of? Does this come out of our construction, like our bond funds?
Yes, yes, it'll come out of that as well.
Okay, great. Any questions from the committee on this item? Any questions from the full board? Okay. All in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
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 Okay. We will bundle items E and F. A new VFD pump for Rainbow Elementary at $6,450, and a change addition for North Brandywine that is a positive $50,121.55 and a negative $34.65. Any questions or comments on these 2 items? Any comments from the full board? Okay. All in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
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 Yes. Okay. We'll go to number letters G and H. This is disposal of equipment that's no longer being used. G is vehicles and H is other equipment. Any questions from the committee members, from the board? All in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Letter I, Callan Little League, long-term rental. There's a lot of information here, but there's a fee that Callan Little League will be paying, and there's a maintenance agreement associated. And this is a very long-standing partnership between the district and Callan Little League. Any questions or comments from the committee? From the full board? Okay. All in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
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 Okay, I'm going to take something out of order. I would like to bundle letter J and letter O, if that's okay, Mr. Solicitor? Absolutely. Okay, I just want to make sure that that doesn't have to be done separately. So letter J, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, consent order and agreement, and letter O is the PFAS treatment system for Kings Highway. Dr. Rabarchek, can you just explain, because there's a lot of legal stuff on J, can you just explain what's going on here and what we're doing?
Yeah, I'm going to bring up Mr. Rizzo as well.
Go ahead. He stayed here all this time for a reason.
He's been working very closely with the water company and the Department of Environmental Protection.
Thank you.
So, the first one, I forget the number, the consent order, I'm sorry, is a culmination of our work with the DEP and the 4 tests that resulted in a level that wasn't passing theirs. So we entered into a consent agreement with them, which basically tells them that we're going to follow their rules and do what we have to do to rectify the problem. The second one is the solution, which is going to be approved, reviewed, and signed off by them. And we did get quotes. While the second quote was less initially, none of the fees involved with it were included, which would have brought it over what their quote was. So, and the company that is currently doing all of our work up there is the one that came in and got the quote. So this actually has to be approved. I did tell them it would be approved at our April meeting, and after that meeting, once it's signed, they will get it the next day. So just so we're all on the same page, and you know, we're ahead with this so far, and they're happy that we're being so proactive.
Any questions for Mr. Brazil from the committee?
No, I just want to continue to thank you and Mr. Robarchuk, Dr. sorry, for all the work that you guys have been doing, because this has been a complicated thing that you guys had to work through, and you guys have done your best to make sure that we're compliant with everything and our kids are safe the whole time. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor of moving those 2 items to the full board agenda, please say yes.
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 Yes, okay. I will bundle K, L, M, N. Some of these are not entirely related. K is just a modification of space and therefore rent for Benner Building. And then there are 3 other mechanical maintenance items. I will note that the gym floor, you can see we got a very thorough quote with a low bid there that's substantially less than the others. And the Rainbow Elementary roof inspection and electrical testing and maintenance are the remaining items. Any question on those 4 items? Okay, any questions from the full board? All in favor of moving those to the full board agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, it is so moved. Letters P and Q, Martin Tree Service, very good rates for these tree and stump removals. Are there any questions from the committee? Any questions from the board? All in favor of moving these to the full board agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Letter R, East Fallowfield Township Stormwater Management Facilities Operation and Maintenance Agreement. This is needed for us to move forward with Doe Run Elementary School, so very important. Any questions or comments on this item from the full board? Okay. All in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
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 Yes. Okay. Letters S and T, Pittsburgh Stage, Reeseville Elementary Stage Curtains, and Intermediate High School Stage Curtains and Equipment. These are $56,981 for Reeseville and $19,901 for the Intermediate High School. Yes. Yes, there is a very big hole in that one. Any questions or comments from the committee? Full board? Okay. All in favor of moving these to the full board agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. We will do letters U and V together. Pluralsight Online Tech Professional Development for $990, and Instructure Canvas API for a total cost of $3,000 for one term, starting April 1st. Any questions or comments on these items? Okay, full board? Okay, all in favor of moving these to the full board agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Okay. And letter W, Weaver Landscaping, this is essentially just an early extension of our existing contract, keeping the same rates. So locking in early. Any questions from the committee? From the full board? Okay, all in favor of moving this to the full board agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. There are no informational items. There is no old business. Is there any new business? Is there any public comment? Okay. Our next meeting of the Operations Committee will be May 13th, 2025. And with that, the Operations Committee is adjourned at 8:57 p.m.
I'm going to wing it. All right. I call to order the Policy Committee for April 8th, 2025. Wait, who's here? It's just you, and I think Mr. Wilson is, I'm saying who's here. I agree. I don't think we should be doing this at all, but that's, he said no, but that's okay. Yep, Mr. Wilson and Ms. Brindle and myself filling in for Holly Charest. Well, all we've got tonight is to approve the minutes for nothing last time. Approval of the March 11th, 2025 Policy Committee meeting minutes. Do we agree?
Yes.
Awesome. Fantastic. No presentations, no agenda items, no informational items, old business, new business, public comment. I'm not trying to rush it. Okay, great, thank you. Next meeting, is there really going to be a meeting on May 13th? Do you think so? Because why announce it if we're not going to?
For policy?
Yeah, for policy.
No, there will be for May 13th.
There will be one for May 13th, 2025. Would you like to add to that?
Dr. Robarczyk and I are working on a thrilling and exciting
I'm so excited.
policy review cycle that'll be presented in the near future.
Awesome, fantastic. So there will be our next meeting on May 13th, 2025. All right, I guess it's time to adjourn. I adjourn this meeting at, what time is it? 8:59. Oh my God. I adjourn this meeting at 8:59. Boom. Good.